channels switching on the recorder.
That would be Glenn saying, Patrick.
Yes. Do that. I didn't know it was cruiserweight night.
Certainly.
I would wear my Hawaiian shirt.
I got permission from staff to give me the
Okay, We're no longer like a bank collector. Good. Okay, I know what I did, but I just, you thought I'd check on the next time I saw you. Yeah, very good. Thank you.
Yeah, we don't need it tonight. You're not getting one tonight. But if you want to give it to me, I'll take it and I'll incorporate it.
They
No,
haven't
you're on the
signed.
24th. No, 24th.
So when can the payments go?
If you sign all that paperwork, I'll talk to the city attorney. I'll talk to them before they officially do it or not.
Okay.
But if not, I mean, do it the 25th. But I might be able to do it sooner.
Okay, well, I'll go get them to sign it because they don't have to.
Yeah.
And when can I, Brian's going to tear up the sidewalk now.
Okay.
Okay, so when I get started, yeah, water's there except for the meter, they didn't get a chance to put a meter.
And it's on their list of things to do. Joe, I think she said that we could send it over since it's for self-motor. I don't know. Yeah, ask Sue. You're welcome. Yeah. He's wanting to close it.
Oh, no, we can't leave it open.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. We'd rather close it, Joe.
So what if we turn it off? So I guess you guys are looking for another city council person?
To be district one.
Alright. You do have, I don't know what this is. You got it? Yeah, I have to do that.
Hey, go, Karen.
Alright, well then I guess I'll come see you tomorrow and drop this off, I'll get them to sign it.
Woo! Careful. I have to get in and out of meetings tomorrow, so you may not actually catch me, but just leave it up front.
Okay, so there was something about, in that email you sent that says I need 6,700 something, 6,000. Does that need to be paid now, or is that? Because if it's 6,000, I'm going to pay.
So the total SDC is now 10,962.
Yeah, exactly. That's all.
Okay. And then you have the wastewater connection. That's the $6,000. Which is the time and materials and we get money back.
Okay.
So that's the cost to have you guys go out there and bring the lateral over to you.
Okay. So I'm ready to dig that out, just, I'm ready to move forward. I'm ready to pay the 6,000, whatever. So tomorrow, if you know, logging, I want to change it, just give me a day.
Okay.
I can be there bright and early in the morning. As soon as I open up, they're signing yours.
Okay.
All right?
All right.
Thanks. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, I was going to my recycling. Okay. So by tomorrow, I'm going to be out. I've never been to Red Sox. I went and saw it Fenway Park the last time I went. And got some tour, you know that. I've never seen a game, so I was like, oh, that's cool. And then yesterday we went to Newberg, and we went to seawater.
I mean, Denise, I'm sorry. You corrected me about 8 months ago on that.
I've never seen it that close, so I'm great.
Summation, please.
Oh.
Here's the board.
Damage report, not too many things.
This works, right?
Yes. Hi. Sorry.
I'm not sure, yeah.
Okay, good. Well, that's all I wanted to know. I mean, garbage in, garbage out. I just didn't even know what you called it.
Then you gotta put PVC liner in.
And it's like really good the way I do it.
You don't want to PVC liner there.
I don't want to be known tonight.
Your number, you're my number one.
Above the trestle, that, the guys were walking with the line, they heard somebody go off, it's pretty exposed, 100 feet of concrete, joints separated, with the six lines with.
I have
So, yeah, I'm gonna go take pictures of it with the guys, and, you know, the trestle, there's a segment right in the middle of nowhere, that, need to look at the master plan. Anyway, they said it's very difficult to get in there, and with anything just major weapons, crack road, it's an emergency road, we got to get on it, because they're worried about if the creek separates pipe anymore, run right down the way, and then the sewer's gonna run out. We need a design first. So you know what the guys are gonna do? They're just gonna go in with a bunch of slurry and pumps and hoses and right over the top of it. And I said, I don't think so. That was
I need it, but my hair lady can't get me back in for like another month. Oh my gosh,
moved to Texas, and I went to visit her in March.
Outside out of mind, just go do it, baby. I do the farm all the time.
I'm not built for this. Are you kidding me? Really confusing. Her
It
mother
was nice. Family got together. In the rain. It rained for 6 days. It chose wedding night to do it though. And we were somehow prepared. Luckily it was, 75 and so it was
Yeah, well, we got married here, and then we had a wedding this year. On one of the days that we were delivery, so it was outside of our religious limit. I could imagine it.
No, Gary, my brother came and got me.
Or Oregonians doing their weddings over summer, spring and fall, whatever. My coworker got married in October. I love it.
Now I can't.
See there, I don't take a picture. See there, I'm like, oh my gosh, you need to make sure I'm going back to Portland. I'm done. Yeah, you're the one that looks like the twin. Yeah.
Yes.
Are you speaking? I think your cats come up to my son when they go born.
Then we have a orange cat. The tan one with some rules kind of coming together. And then we want them to approve.
I think it might be the orange one.
Yeah. And then there'll be another well behaved.
Yeah.
Solid. So that must not be worse. 6 weeks.
Well, my son's an animal whisperer, so maybe that's it.
Got it. Yeah, most of the neighborhood cats know me. I walk around. It's coming to you next.
2 in 2 months.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for being here for the special council session that we're having on August 14, 2017. And with that, I'm going to call our council session to order. I need a roll call, please.
Mr. Mayor, all present with the exception of Councilor Corey, who's excused.
And that is an excused absence. Would you please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The agenda this evening is a little bit different than what we normally have, so we're going to proceed immediately into the area of public comments. And I do have some people signed up for special areas that we will be talking about. I do not have anybody signed up for just general public comments. So with that, we're past the public comments section, I have people signed up to talk to us about the annexation and the ballot measure potential. And with that, then we'll pass the public comments, and we will now go into continued business, which is the right-of-way that we have, that we set over from the previous council meeting in the absence of an additional document. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Karn to bring us up to date. And this will be dealing with Resolution 2017-3377. And it's a resolution authorizing the city manager to enter into a right-of-way dedication easement and improvement agreement with KWDS LLC on the Villa Road Improvement Project. Karn?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. So hopefully third time's a charm on this one. So this is the agreement for the right-of-way dedication and the improvements for the frontage of the KWDS property, which is at the corner of Villa Road and Park Lane. This has to do with KWDS paying for their portion of the improvements of the Villa Road project. And providing the right-of-way necessary in order to build that project. So I know a couple things that have come up. Wanted to note that, again, KWDS is going to pay $342,750, which is about 12% of the construction costs that came in. And they have about 595 lineal feet of the project frontage. It's about 17%. This was a negotiated process, so we started with one number and we went back and forth between the two of us to come to this decision back in February is when the numbers were finalized. So one other thing to note, there is right-of-way dedication and easement dedication provided with this agreement, and there's no money, we're not providing the property owner with any money for that. So there is a cost associated with those right-of-way dedications also.
Do that one more time for me, please, Karn, that last.
So there's, as part of this improvement agreement, there's a right-of-way dedication that they are providing and easement dedications that they are providing to the city. And we are not paying, in most cases, we would pay for that, acquiring that right-of-way and those easements. And in this case, we are not paying for that, so there is a cost. If we were going to go buy the right-of-way, say, from them, based on the other costs of the right-of-way that we're acquiring out in this corridor, it would be about $100,000. So
they are dedicating then.
They are dedicating it for no cost.
All right, thank you.
So that's kind of all I wanted to say. Again, there is no cost that we are providing. They are providing basically a fee in lieu to construct their portion of the improvements. It includes curbs, sidewalk, bike lanes, asphalt, the left turn lane. And they also need a water connection for their development, and they are paying the cost of that water connection also. So I'm here for questions.
Councilor Johnson, Councilor Essen.
So, just so I'm clear, if we were paying for the right-of-way, you're saying it would be $100,000, roughly? Okay.
Correct.
Okay, great. And then the other piece of this too is, do you have a breakdown of how you came to the $342,750?
I do. There's a spreadsheet that we went back and forth with several different times between us and KWDS to come to that dollar amount.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Councilor Essen.
Yeah, first of all, at Mr. McKinney's urging, let me just say that I asked you a question followed by the add-on, did you? And I've looked that up, and that was in violation of council policy. So for that, I would apologize. And I think we've already met and talked, and I've sent you some other information, but just to let you know, I do not intend to beat you about the head and face just because you come before me. And then as far as the right-of-way, normally there's a 60-foot right-of-way that they're required to dedicate. But this is going to be much wider because of the turn lane, is that right?
That is correct. There's actually right-of-way, and then there's also construction easement because we have to get behind what will be the sidewalk in order to construct the improvements.
And follow on?
Follow on?
And in my haste to defend the trees, I was opposed to this. However, if we were going to save these trees, which we're not, but if we were, we'd need that right-of-way. So regardless, we need the right-of-way, whatever we do, because we're trying to make this a safer street, and it's going to be a little wider than your normal street. So I'm just making sure that we understand that that extra $100,000 would really be there, because they would have to give us a 60-foot right-of-way, which I think is 5 foot. But we already have most of that right-of-way on both sides of the street. So my question is, I've been getting further emails, and I know you have been too, and you've been responding to them. My understanding is that there can be change orders in this project, but and there was questions about, well, let's assume, oh, by the way, I wanted to also say for the record, I re-inspected this tree. I found some major concerns that I have with its ability to survive the north tree. And looking at the new plan that we have, it would require a lot of digging on the west side. In other words, on the other side of the truck, if we were to go around it, we'd still have to, there's going to be some buildings there. So we'd have to dig whatever it takes to dig it out to put the buildings in. And so that would probably damage it further. So I'm wondering if the tree survivability on the north end, we would have had to have, you're correct, we would have had to have another inspection. And there's a specific kind of license you get. It's an add-on license if you're an ISH tree inspector. It's a tree inspection that gives you what would happen if we try to save this tree. We haven't had that inspection, but I done those inspections, and I'm really questioning whether the north tree would survive with what we're going to do. I think the south tree would survive, and because there's nothing wrong with it. The problem it has is it's still in that distance of a left turn lane, a 400-foot left turn lane. So the argument that you're hearing now is, geez, if you made a change order on this, you would be able to save the south tree. And there's emails coming in saying, actually, the speed is designed at 32 miles an hour, but at the bridge, it wouldn't be safe over 25. So if we're making a lane 32 miles an hour down to a spot that would be unsafe at 25 because you would make a turn and there's an abutment there. It's too narrow, plus you've got a turn and a downgrade. So there is some concerns coming on that, and I just want to see if you're open to those suggestions. Because I don't, what I'm trying to get out of this, somehow we get to be adversarial. And you don't have to be adversarial. I don't have to be adversarial to make my points. And it doesn't help. What helps is for us to get together and talk about things and see if they'd work. Now, I did look up how long this thing's been on the books. I found this project goes clear back to 2012. 2015, we had a map of this, and there were also meetings, public meetings in 2015 before that. So this has been on the drawing boards for a long time.
I'm going to interrupt. What is your question in regarding, what is your discourse in regarding
My
the
question
before us, which is the
Right.
contract with KWDS?
Right.
For
I'm saying
their
that
right-of-way.
this right-of-way is necessary no matter what we do. And so I'm going to be in favor of it. But there's some issues coming in, technical issues that are coming in that may be worth looking at because of the safety, the very safety concern we're talking about. So I'm wondering if, because of this, we can still look at making the road even safer.
That's a separate question.
Separate from the,
That's a separate question from this
issue?
From this issue.
Okay, then I'll withdraw the question.
Follow on, Councilor McKinney.
Thank you, Scott, for your overtures. I know that they're going to be appreciated there. And my question for Karn is this: if what we're doing right here, the awarding or dealing with this motion or whatever, is there a methodology in place for these change orders that will maybe allow for further adaptation as the Villa project begins, has a middle and has an end?
So as part of a construction contract, there's always a possibility for change orders. But those are generally limited in nature. They aren't intended for a complete redesign of a project in the middle of a project. You know, sometimes that happens, but that's pretty severe, and you don't really want to go there in most cases. So the way the contract's written is that you can change your quantities within the contract because it's based on a bid quantity, and sometimes those change in the field. Minor changes, there's no change in a dollar amount. The amount of changes that we're talking about, if we're talking about completely changing the grade of the road, those are pretty significant, and that takes a complete redesign. You can't just look at it in isolation. I'll just throw a couple things out there. What Councilor Essen is talking about is, just to throw some facts out, the entire road was designed for 25 miles per hour. It was not designed for 32. It was designed for 25 miles per hour. Currently, the traffic is going 32, but that's a complete different conversation. The design was for 25 miles an hour. If we're changing grades, again, that changes the entire project. And so that's not just a change order. That's not something you can do on the fly in a week. That takes some significant effort, both time and resources, and those types of things. The other piece I wanted to point out is, I know there's been some angst about trying to save that southern tree, and when you measure it out, ignoring the left turn lane, if you measure out from center line to the edge of what would be the typical section, it needs 27.5 feet. The tree is 18 feet away from center line. So ignoring the left turn lane, ignoring putting in a left turn lane, unless we're going to go and try to acquire significant more right-of-way to go completely around the tree, which negates the agreement that you had in front of you. Again, but that takes time, and that's a negotiation process. So, if we're going to build the project as is, the tree is going to have to come out. If the council wants to do anything other than that, we need to stop the project, and that would be a conversation with the city attorney, because we have given the contractor notice of award at this point based on the council awarding last week. And then we would go and redesign, take the time, get arborists on board, as Councilor Essen talked about, to have somebody who looks at all of the pieces to determine what would have to happen in order to save either or one or the other of the tree.
Thanks for answering the question. This is not a question of change orders. Either we do change the design altogether and postpone and forego or whatever, but we're at that point to where we're well on our way to proceeding through this process here. And it should be noted for the record is that Scott just didn't look at the tree as a city councilman. He has a background as an arborist, so maybe that's an important note to make here. Anyway, thank you, Carl.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilor Essen?
I just wanted to say, I thought that might be where you were going on this. There will also be some concerns about the safety, whether we meet standards with the road, even with the way it's designed. But you're thinking, and I don't know if you've seen those yet, but you're thinking you can make the changes to save to make sure we're within standards.
Councilor Essen, yes, the design is within standards. It's within all engineering standards. Murray Smith has stamped those designs. They put their name on it, and I wouldn't have actually put the contract out if I didn't believe that it met standards and it was safe.
Any other questions or comments that you have for the staff at this time? It's not a public hearing, it's just continued business. You have before you the resolution authorizing the city manager to deal with entering into a right-of-way dedication easement and improvement agreement with KWDS LLC on the Villa Road Improvement Project, and that's dealing with that developer on that part of it, not the design of the actual road itself. Pleasure of the council.
Here.
Councilor McKinney.
Move that we proceed with 2017-3377, a resolution authorizing the city manager to enter into a right-of-way dedication easement and improvement agreement with KWDS LLC and the Villa Road Improvement Project.
Second. It's been moved and seconded. Second is Johnson. I will be supporting this resolution, and I want to thank staff and the council both for your patience on this. We were missing the Exhibit B. Exhibit B, it is? Yes, Exhibit A, which is the actual easement and improvement agreement to make sure that I had a chance to review that, and I thank you for that, and I will be in support of this. Councilor Essen?
I'm going to support it because even if they could do everything I wanted to do, they'd need this agreement would have to be put into place. Now, from what I'm just hearing, the agreement would guarantee that, because that would be part of the agreement, that the trees would be removed. But I'm more concerned about safety concerns. I've moved on to another section. Council's made their decision previously, and I believe this part is necessary. I still think there's going to be some safety issues that have not been addressed, but of course we've got some stamped drawings that say they are, but we'll see. So I will be voting for it.
Any other comments? Are you ready for the question?
Call for the question.
Question's been called for. May we have a division of the House, please?
Councilor McKinney?
Yes.
Councilor Bacon?
Yes.
Councilor Johnson?
Yes.
Councilor Essen?
Yes.
Mayor Andrews?
Yes. 0-1. Okay, motion passes. The resolution has been adopted. And with that, we will move to new business. And this is a very important part of tonight's business. And we will be interviewing, and then later on at the council meeting, we will then make a decision as to an appointment. But we have a vacancy on the council for District 1, and we will be interviewing 3 candidates this evening for this particular position. We have a series of questions. We will all be asking the same question of each individual, and then after we've had these interviews, we will then proceed with further business dealing with the annexation into TVFNR and the resolution dealing with a possible charter amendment. And then at that time, following those, we will then have a discussion and appointment for the vacancy in District 1. So with that, I'm going to call on our first candidate, and if you would come forward, have a seat, turn the microphone, this little silver button on the right, turn the microphone on, and we have a series of questions, and we thank the candidates for having taken the time to come this evening and be interviewed, and their willingness to step forward and want to assist the city in its governance over the next 3 years. So with that, I'm going to call on Helen Brown, please, if you'd come forward. Good evening, Helen. Thank you for being here. We appreciate it. Would you, for the council's benefit, would you tell us about yourself? This is kind of a compound question. Tell us about yourself, and then after you get a chance to tell us about yourself, then why are you interested in serving on the council?
There wasn't a time limit, so kick me or yell at me or something.
No, I won't yell at you on this one.
Find my notes.
I'll save that for later.
This personal stuff. I was born and raised on the San Francisco Peninsula.
Wait, no, Helen, would you identify yourself, because we're recording this?
Sure. I'm Helen Brown. I live in Newberg, and I've applied for the position because I think it's really important for community citizens to participate. I was born and raised on the San Francisco Peninsula, 25 miles south of San Francisco, and my whole growing up life, I lived in the same house, went to the same schools, and had the same friends all through school. Then I went to community college, but unfortunately I wasn't really motivated to do anything except the art that I thought I wanted to do. And I spent most of my time watching the sailboats on the bay coming up. And after that, I got married, had 2 daughters, got divorced, went to San Francisco State University to obtain teaching credentials and a bachelor's degree in interdisciplinary social science. The last year of getting my bachelor's degree, I did a research project on a Northern California Indian rancheria, and lived there with my kids for about 7 months, and it was a real turning point in my life of being in a different situation, having been born and raised in one place all the other time. My daughters went to the school on the rancheria, which was a 2-room schoolhouse, and they were in 2nd and 4th grade, and I worked at the Head Start that was on the rancheria, and took the school kids on trips and stuff. Anyway, I helped out in both areas and got to really know some of the people and their culture. When I got my degree, I had to go the 5th year to get my teaching credentials. And then after that, I moved to Grants Pass in Southern Oregon and lived there for 25 years. When my girls left to go to, they're 2 years apart, I think of them as twins sometimes. One went to Oregon State University and the other one went to Willamette University. And by that time I had been working in a mental health program as a counselor and doing court commitments and being on the crisis team 24/7, 1 week out of every 5 weeks. And I got really tired of hearing adults who were wounded or not nourished as children, and I thought, I don't like this, I'm going to go back to early childhood. So when my kids were in school, I went back to school myself and got my master's degree in early childhood special education. And before I moved to Eugene to go to school, I had gotten really interested in the community where I was living, and been there a long time, and got involved with the city government and was on the planning commission when it was just a city planning commission, and then it went to an urban area planning commission. I was reappointed for that for about 3 years before I went to Eugene. Anyway, I had this sort of esoteric research project, and during the summers, when I didn't do classes, but I was hired back by mental health to fill in for vacationing therapists. And so I did this commute from Eugene to Grants Pass for 2 years, just during the summers. And after I got my master's, I was surprised I was hired in Grants Pass, of all places, and ended up being there. And when I decided to move to where my grandson was, that I lived for 6 years in Humboldt County in Northern California. I got homesick for Oregon, and I taught for a year at Mount Hood Community College and had to join the union to do that, teachers union. And one of the things that we worked on was trying to pass a sales tax, and was quite strict about would only go for education and, you know, couldn't be changed and all that stuff. But of course it didn't pass. But when I moved to California to be mom or grandson, I realized that a sales tax doesn't solve anything. At least it certainly didn't in California. Anyway, so I got tired of bad roads and poor schools and decided I was going to come back to Oregon. And so I came here. And I feel like I had learned a lot in all those experiences, but besides learning a lot about early childhood education and parent skills and teaching various kids from preschool to community college level, I stayed interested in city government. And so when I moved here, I started going to, actually I read in the paper about the Citizens Rate Review Committee. And so for whatever year that was, I wasn't appointed, but I just went to all those meetings and got hooked again on city government and how important it was. And is that the second part then, is why do I think I could be here?
Why are you interested in serving on the council?
Because I feel that so many citizens in the U.S. think all government is like federal government, and that it doesn't matter what they think or say or do, that nothing changes and that things will be horrible all the time. And I know that that's not true, and I am, it helps my psyche to know that I'm not stuck in that ether where you think that you have no choice. You know, you vote for somebody and that's all you do, that it's not true, that people are meant to talk about issues, they're meant to dialogue, they're meant to argue, they're meant to test limits and see what works and what works for their community. And that's part of my life as I'm getting ancient, is to know that not one thing works for everybody. And so this, having a city council is like the grassroots of democracy. And it's interesting to be part of it, and it also makes me feel as though I have some power in a time when it's pretty evident that I'm swimming against the some of the fish going the other way.
Thank you. Appreciate it very much. Stephen?
Counselor Helen, number 3, this question here. What do you think is the most positive attribute of the city of Newberg?
When I came here, I had never seen a community work the way that this community does, with especially things like Love Inc. and how so many people are involved in so many things that help other people. And I never ever got the feeling in the 10 years I've lived here that it's an us versus them kind of thing. You know, you poor people, we will give you a handout. I don't feel like that, and I think that the community's way of solving, for instance, baby diapers, you know, there's a church that's what they do, and they're not stressed at providing meals or providing blankets or anything else, you know, diapers. And that's, I think that a lot of thought went into preparation of taking care of a community when it's done in small pieces by lots of people. And I was, I don't know what the right word is, not enlightened, but encouraged when reading the paper after the old-fashioned days, and how many times in the paper and people that I talked to talked about the feeling of community, that feeling of helping other people or getting along with other people or enjoying being with other people. And especially in this time of electronic communication, where so many people evidently feel so alienated that they have to put online what they're feeling about something when, you know, personally I could care less, but some people feel like that's the only way that they are validated as a human being, is to give something back. Thank you.
Yeah.
And in reading the paper, it seems as though many people, when interviewed or just talking to a reporter, would say that I feel connected.
Patrick?
Helen, what is your understanding of the role of a counselor, and what has prepared you to be a counselor?
I'm gonna have to put my little, what was,
You want me to go again?
yeah.
Okay. What is your understanding of the role of a counselor, and what has prepared you to be a counselor?
Oh, I think my experiences on being on the planning commission and also going to city council meetings in different places is that the council people need to be educated, and you can't just come to a meeting and pretend you've read stuff. You know, you have to know what you're talking about, and you have to be informed about zoning and about infrastructure, and you know, it's a really important position, and it involves learning about whatever it is you're talking about. And I've had that experience and know that you don't just show up at a meeting without reading the packet. You people are the ones, whoever elected you, expected that you would help take care of the city. And I never see a whole bunch of people here unless there's something controversial. But every time you come to a meeting and you make a decision or you ask a question, you're putting your integrity on the line. And that I've never seen anybody at a meeting here act as if they know what they're talking about when they really don't.
Follow on.
Helen, remind us of all of the jobs that you've done in the city of Newberg so far. I know that you mentioned that you've served on planning commissions, but tell us about the different committees and commissions that you've served on in Newberg.
The budget committee.
Budget.
For 2 terms, I think, maybe more. I don't, anyway, that was is an interesting experience. And the citizens rate review was an interesting.
How many
thing.
terms there?
I just did the one. And the reason I went to the meetings was what I saw happening in Grants Pass was that the utilities, mainly what I was interested in was I was irritated that the cable companies would come in and make a contract with the city, and then the next thing you knew they were saying, oh, whoops, we need, X jillion more dollars, and so we want the city council to okay that. Well, I thought that this committee, when they talked about utilities, that was one of the things. So it turns out it was city utilities, and like I said, it got me hooked anyway, doing that. And because for 3 years I haven't had a car, it makes it difficult for me to commit to other things. But that's coming to the city council meetings, and I keep saying to myself, I'm going to go to the planning commission meetings here, and I haven't done it. But that's another love, and it just takes more foot power than I've got.
Thank you, Helen. I get it. There's 2 things in life I said I would never do: be a planning commissioner and work in HR. And wouldn't you know it, those are the difficult things that come to this diet, right? Thank you, Helen.
Denise?
Hi, Helen. I have a 2-part question. And I'll read them both, but if you need the help on the second one, I'm fine. Share with us your assessment of a recent decision of this new. Start again. Share with us your assessment of any recent decision of the City Council. That's one. What do you feel is the most critical issue facing the city of Newberg today?
I was at the meeting last week, and I felt that people had applied for a permit or the okay to do a project. And then it turns out that there were some semantics that got in the way that hadn't been legally addressed. And I expected that someone would say, wait a minute, let's do an ad hoc legal committee to define these things before we go any further so that we can deal with these people. And that would have been one way. Another thing that I thought I knew they had been there before, who people were applying, and that perhaps if they were, because sometimes people are in a real rush to do something, that it might have been a better thing to say to these people. There haven't been definitions of these words, but you've been kind and patient and trying to get this done, so we'll pass yours, but then that's it. We'll not let any more people apply for this without having a real definition of large lot or, something that you could say, okay, these are the parameters of that question. And so I thought that maybe you guys were going to sit here till 11 o'clock at night trying to make those definitions at the meeting. And I left because, thank goodness I had a ride home, but I also felt like it was more that biting off more than you would chew at that one time. But I haven't been privy to all the other discussions that have been going on, because I'm not a council person, so I didn't know if it could be done, that you could come to decisions to define those words. But that was the one thing that stuck in my head was, what do you do in a situation where the tables have turned?
What do you feel is the most critical issue facing the city of Newberg today?
I think, like with everything else, it's the change, it's growth, it's what direction are we comfortable going in, what direction are we willing to say we're not going to go there. As a city, already you've wrestled with, what about fire department? What about things that that bypass? You've had big decisions already that have dealt with change, which is inevitable. But whenever I've been to the city council meetings, sometimes there's been contention, but it's not that there are people at either end of the continuum being nasty to each other. It's that process of, okay, where do we go from here? And the fact that somewhere there's a plan, and when does that plan need to be changed, and what's the process for that change? And as long as everybody knows that change is inevitable, that you can say, all right, let's try this. And if nobody points a finger at one or two people and says, you idiot, how come you said that? Or why, just that recognizing that everybody has opinions and feelings and differences of where they're coming from, but where we're going is a place to go as a community and as a set of people, that being kind to one another is really important.
Thank you.
Scott?
Yes. Welcome, Helen. Would you describe your understanding of the time commitment associated with serving on the city council? And are you prepared to meet it? For example, this month we've had a council meeting on July 31st, August 7th, August 14th, and we'll have another one on August 24th. in addition, in my position, I have a Parkway Committee meeting, a Transit Committee meeting, a local government dinner, greeters, and a meeting with Senator Merkley. So there's a little bit more to it than just attending meetings. Are you aware of that, or are you prepared to do it?
When I was on the Planning Commission and the Urban Area Planning Commission, I was working full-time and raising my kids as a single parent, and was lots younger and had more energy, but I don't have now any of those distractions. And I think that time management is a really important thing, especially when you have a meeting every week or more than one meeting a week. And the idea that all of you know that it wasn't going to be a walk in the park, that your commitment to being here and being part of the democratic process is a really important thing. And so hopefully nobody takes on a commitment like city council and then says, oh, gee, I can't come to this meeting because I'd rather go to the movie, or, oh, I just forgot I'm going to have a trip to Hawaii in a week and it's going to last 3 weeks. And you can't do that. Well, you could, but you'd let down a lot of people. So.
Thank you, Helen. We appreciate you taking the time to do this. Now, do you have any questions for us?
Yeah, I did. I don't know where I've been in my head about the city's master plan. I didn't think to say, oh, I want to read that or look at it or peruse what's gone on so far. And when is it due for I don't know, not a referral, but yeah. And I was thinking about legally, Mr. Stone, you must know, what's coming down the pike about legal stuff. And are there things that those who aren't in the field don't know, but, is there anything legally coming that says, watch out, city council, you're going to get smacked by this legal issue, that everybody will have to do the little tap dance to catch up or whatever. Anyway, I think that hit me because of that horrible white supremacist thing that, we all believe in free speech, but we don't believe in killing people, to say I'm right and you're wrong. And will issues like that put some handcuffs on things that we're used to seeing or doing? And I'm not even asking for an answer, but that made me sort of think about how idyllic Grants Pass, Newberg is in our way of life. When you think that a group could come and cause that much harm in a community just for allowing free speech. Anyway, I also read an article in the New Yorker from 2 years ago about the big earthquake, and the author predicted, and I feel like she had really good facts, that for infrastructure, those of us west of I-5 might not have water treatment, sewage treatment for 3 years, not just, 3 months. And my younger daughter goes all around doing stuff, and one of the things that she did was to go to, she was hired to go to where Katrina was, not just a specific place, but Starbucks evidently had a whole bunch of people that volunteered to go and help. And I was thinking if the big one happens here, it's going to be way worse than Katrina. And how will we survive? How will we get clean water? How will we be able to get to the ocean or to I-5? Anyway, just a huge amount of change will happen in our lives and in our city. And we would hope that the rest of the country would chip in, and not just with FEMA, but that was one of my thoughts, was what's going to happen to little Newberg.
Well, I'd like to put your mind at ease that the council, the city manager, and the staff are working very diligently in various areas on emergency preparedness, emergency response, and the issues dealing with recovery post-incident. So thank you for your concern.
Thank you for planning ahead.
Any other questions that you might have?
No,
for the
that's
council?
it.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
You're welcome to stay with us. We will be making a decision later in this council meeting.
I'll sit back there and listen.
And with that, Michelle Joslin, did I do that right?
Yes.
Please come forward.
Hello.
All right. You've got the button's there. We know all that. And you kind of have a sense of what the drill is. So thank you for being here. We appreciate your interest and your willingness to be a candidate for the vacancy on our council. So let's start out by having you tell us about yourself, and then why are you interested in serving as a counselor?
Yeah, absolutely. So I am.
Your name, please?
Oh, sorry.
We're recording. That's the only reason I am.
Should have learned from the first go. My name is Michelle Joslin. I am a lifelong resident of the Pacific Northwest. My husband and I moved to Newberg about 4 years ago. We were in Portland, in inner Southeast, and we loved the community, the involvedness of our neighbors, but wanted something a little bit slower. And my husband at the time said, gosh, let's try out Newberg. He worked up and down the valley. I said, I don't think it's for me. So he talked me into visiting one day and fell in love. We walked up and down, Hancock and the other main street. I never remember the name. But yeah, we went to Recipe and we had a wonderful time. And so we moved here and haven't looked back. Other things about me, my degree is in small business management. Actually, I'd like to thank Helen. I graduated from Mount Hood Community College, and it's a beautiful school with wonderful faculty. Let's see. I just wanted to share that I'm really a believer in sustainable community. I think I put that in my application. But what that means to me is each individual working for their best interest, but also for the interest of their neighbors and everyone else that they impact in their daily lives. I think everyone should be given an opportunity to realize their potential.
A little bit of your professional background?
Yes. So I've served in the financial industry for about 10 years. Most recently, the last 5, I've worked in mortgage lending. So thankfully, I got into it after the crash, and I didn't have to be a part of that. And I'm currently a branch manager of a mortgage lender in Beaverton.
Have you been involved in any volunteer activities in the city?
Yes, I have. I was on the family selection committee for the Newberg Habitat for Humanity. And then, although it wasn't a committee, I participated with the Downtown Newberg Coalition and attended some of the meetings, and then worked with the small group afterwards to put together the recommendation that was presented to the City Council.
Again, let me come back. I may have missed it, and I want to go in more into why are you then interested in serving on the council?
Yeah. The short answer is I have a 2-year-old son. I just want to make the city a better place. I love its motto for being a good place to grow. I just want to make it a great place to grow, a gooder place. Pardon my English.
Thank you. Stephen?
Question number 3 for you, Michelle, is what do you think is the most positive attribute of the city of Newberg?
I have to say it's the residents. From the second we visited, it felt welcoming. The people are great. The businesses are great. My neighbors are great. The people make the city what it is, and they're just amazing people who care about their neighbors and care about the future of the city.
Is that the paramount attribute that you would like to share, or are there other attributes that?
Well, I think that takes lots of different variations. You see it in a lot of different areas. So I live right next to the cultural center. A woman helped build the splash pad a couple years back, or was the foreperson for that. The Old Fashioned Festival, the Camellia Festival, what was it? The Brews and Barbecue. You have people that care and that make the community a great place. And you just see it in lots of different variations.
Do I remember you making a proposal to the city council about a particular issue?
I don't think so.
Okay. I thought maybe you remind me of the glass, of working on the glass collections, but that's a different
It was a
person.
different young lady. It was a young lady.
You know those young people, they all look alike.
I do, I get it.
Thank you.
Yes, Patrick?
You're a tough one to follow.
Number 4.
Yeah, okay, thanks. Michelle, welcome, first of all. And what is your understanding of the role of a counselor, and what has prepared you to be a counselor?
So I was perusing the web to prepare for this, and I saw the City Council's mission to serve citizens, promote safety, and a healthy community. And so I see the City Council's a city council person's role as, listening to the issues that are coming up and, being a good steward of the city and moving the city in that direction and always having that focus, as issues come up. Sorry, I'm not more verbose.
Oh, that's okay.
Hi, Michelle. Again, I have a 2-part question. Share with us your assessment of any recent decisions by the City Council, and what do you feel is the most critical issue facing the City of Newberg today?
So a recent decision was the improvements on 219 on College Street. So the building of bike lanes, sidewalks, curbs, etc. And I think that's in line with making Newberg a safer place. There's about 4 schools that run along that road, either a block or 2 away. So there's a lot of families walking up and down that area, and having those safety features are really important. Also, there was talk about foliage in there, so the aesthetic appeal as well. And then I appreciated the safeguards for the city. So the city has to pick up the tab for any overruns, and the safeguards that are in place to make sure that if there are a chance for overruns, that we have a chance to reevaluate and make sure that we're being good stewards of the city's funds. Oh, and then the second part of the question, I think the most critical issue facing the city is opportunity. I think that is opportunity for children. So Newberg schools do really well on test scores, but there's also a lot of disparity between the test scores of more economically disadvantaged students than there are with students that come from more economically undisadvantaged families. So I think that presents an impediment to opportunity. And then I think economically we have opportunity to grow. So I was reading a bunch of different reviews from residents of Newberg, and one of the things that I saw fairly repeatedly was job opportunities in the city. A lot of people have talked about, don't move to Newberg, there's not jobs, you'll have to go to Sherwood, and if you don't have reliable transportation, the transportation between the two towns isn't fantastic, and there's not a lot of job opportunity. I think the average hourly wage for someone in Newberg is about $13 an hour. That poses a challenge for the city moving forward. So creating jobs, but also jobs that are sustainable for families.
Thank you.
I have a
Follow-on question?
Michelle, in relationship to the North College Project 219, that was a rather significant overrun. What did you think of the way it was resolved?
I have to say I didn't read about how it was resolved.
Patrick, Scott, please.
Yes, welcome, Michelle. Could you describe your understanding of the time commitment associated with serving on the city council, and are you prepared to meet it? I gave an example of the amount of meetings. This is an unusual month, so we haven't had this many meetings, I don't think, in quite a while, but it can give you an example, but the examples I gave, I'm sure you heard. Also, the packets can run up to 450 pages.
Well,
so are you prepared to do that?
Yes, no, the good thing is I do work in the mortgage industry, and I am very used to reading thick legalese from the federal government to know what we can and can't do, and operating within those constraints. And then as far as time commitment, being a branch manager, I am essentially self-employed, and my schedule therefore is pretty flexible, and can definitely move things around to make sure that I'm meeting my professional obligations as well as city council obligations, and reading 400-page packets. Nothing a good bout of Starbucks or Dutch Brothers can't fix, right?
Yes, go ahead.
How did you get away with a 425 packet when Denise and our first packet was about 825? Was that something you guys conspired with over here?
And it was all paper.
Yeah. The time commitment is probably paramount. To the best of my recollection, I've never missed a meeting. And I did push for the postponement of the Eclipse Week meeting by 3 days or whatever. The only thing that could have made this month worse was to have a monthly or a weekly budget meeting in relationship to everything there. And Lon's giggling because he knows there's nothing worse than those budget meetings. It's down through there. Yeah. Oh well. I mean, it's just if it's not one thing, it's another. All right. So in relationship to time, job, and everything else, you're prepared to make that kind of time commitment?
Yes, sir. In fact, again, I have a 2-year-old, so part of the reason that I switched positions a while back was because, I need a flexible schedule because, life demands flexibility. And so I've built that into my profession.
Good. Thank you for answering the question. I didn't want to belabor it, but Haley did a really good job, but that's one of the reasons why she's not here is because her commitment to family has made that adjustment necessary. So anyway, thank you, Michelle.
You're welcome.
Michelle, do you have any questions for us?
I think one of the questions that I wanted to ask was, what kind of viewpoint do you think might help the city council bring more maybe depth to how they look at issues?
Ask me that in a slightly different way, because each person has their own viewpoint.
Yeah.
We don't expect a uniform viewpoint. That's why we have the diversity that we have on the council. So ask me that question in a slightly different way.
Yeah, so there's 7 people on the council, there's 6 right now. What maybe viewpoint isn't represented in the 6 that are currently on the council? Or what experience or viewpoint, or, what could give the council more diversity?
We're all rather verbose in terms of
It depends upon the issue, whose viewpoint is you're asking for. We, in this particular community, we look for representation by residential district. And you are representing the entire city, but they're looking at people coming from particular residential areas. So you bring your skills and your particular viewpoint on things to the table and to the discussion. So we're not looking for somebody, are they always of this particular position? Are they always of that particular position? We're not trying to, so to me, that's like stacking the deck. So I think there is not an answer to your question. We're not looking for a viewpoint other than to be dedicated to serving the city of Newberg.
I think that's a
Councilor
great answer.
McKinney.
Denise.
Oh, I was just going to say, even there's times where Stephen and I might agree, but no one else. Or, it has nothing to do with a particular viewpoint. It's each individual topic that we cover. We see it through our own lens, through our life's experiences. It has nothing to do with age or sex or family or any of it in the end, because that's not the kind of business that we do. So it's just the lens of our own experiences and how we see each issue affecting our neighbors and our friends. But it could be Scott and I together, or all of us together. We never know. It really, it's all the lens of everything that we do.
Yes, Patrick.
I was, Denise referred to it as, it's not necessarily a point of view. You're bringing your skill sets there, but your background in mortgage and housing and some of the other things, there are times to where none of us are mortgage lenders here. We don't understand perhaps the marketplace and how the marketplace is driving this or that. We do know that we want to have diversity in housing where there's a scramble for high density. There's a number of things. So your skill set might end up being an automatic asset to what we ever have here. The other thing that I would add to Denise's remark is that we all have certain filters. And as we're peering through those filters, there is something that comes to mind that might draw one's or another's attention to some different things that are there, so that out of the 7 it ends up being more representative. It might be, there's times to where we've all been surprised by a promise of a previous council. That's the reason why the gas station sits on that particular west side of Fred Meyer over there, because they had always talked about they wanted it right along the highway. ODOT never liked that, but a previous council said, if you ask us about the west side of your establishment, that kind of changes everything. And I can remember I sat there and Mark Shelton was over here, and we thought it was rather important to keep the commitments of previous councils, the continuity of that thing, because it ends up making a better council. And when we can keep our promises to one another, that just is doubly gratifying when it's there. But I'm sure that whoever the counselor is that is appointed after this process here, your filters, your point of view, your skill sets, your background, and everything, it all tends to make this a better diet, a better table. Thank you.
Do you have any other questions?
Nope, that's it. No, sir.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your time. Again, we ask that you remain and be available, and we will see what the outcome is later. Mr. Matthew Murray, please.
Good evening.
You've seen the process that we're going through, so I will ask you to tell us about yourself and why you're interested in serving as a counselor.
Yes, sir. Good evening, council.
Would you please identify yourself again for the
Matthew Murray.
recording?
My name's Matthew Murray. Live here in Newberg on North College Street. My beautiful wife is here behind me. We also have a 2.5-year-old daughter. We moved here 5.5 years ago from Tualatin. Didn't know I wanted to end up in Newberg, but we fell in love with the 1910 Craftsman that we first looked at, and never looked at another house. We sat out on the steps talking about the town and walking around, and it was just everything we wanted. And here we are. I'm a senior sales engineer with ITT Gould's Pumps. We're a Fortune 1000 company and manufacturer of large industrial pumps. Excuse me. And my role is to cover 14 paper mills throughout the Northwest, between Oregon, Washington, and Idaho. Love spending time with the community, love spending time with my family. I'm a family man. And some of the things that we love to do are spend time doing First Fridays, the other community events that we have here in town. Try to go to all of them when I'm in town from work. Some of my hobbies, things that I enjoy doing, we love boating. We have the Willamette River here in town. Going out on the boat and going wine tasting with friends. And I collect vinyl records. I know a lot of people don't think that's cool anymore, but it's one thing that I love to collect. So that's kind of me in a nutshell.
And the second part of that, why are you interested in serving as a counselor on the Newberg City Council?
Quite frankly, I didn't know I wanted to be on city council until I was approached by one of my neighbors. I didn't know the opportunity was there. I have always thought about being on city council, wherever we landed permanently, and until this opportunity came forward, I didn't know. This is an important place that we have here in town, and the opportunity here for growth and development. The way the town's moving, there's so many cool things and exciting things that are going to happen here, and I want to be a part of that. I want to represent my community and my neighborhood with that transition, and I think that my civic duty as being a citizen, being on the council, is a perfect platform for that. It's representing my community that way. Quite frankly, I don't know where there's a better place to live in the valley. So as a community and as a council, and how can we make this the best place to live and grow? And that's really why I want to be here, to make a difference, make an impact.
Thank you. Stefan?
What do you think is the most, excuse me, what do you think is the most positive attribute of the city of Newberg?
I think there's a few, but I think the one that stands out to me the most positive attribute is the physical location of Newberg, Oregon. It's permanent. You can't move it. You can't change it. It's where we are. We're an hour and a half from Mount Hood. We're an hour and a half from the coast. I think we have 80 plus wineries between here and the Dundee Hills and Chehalem Mountains. We have the Willamette River. We have an awesome historic downtown. I think you can't change that when it comes to physical location. You know, you can put Newberg anywhere in Oregon, but it's special because it's here. And I think that the community involvement in events like past candidates have talked about, it's unparamounted. You go to Tunes on Tuesday, for example, everybody's got a smile on their face, everybody's happy. You know, complete strangers you'll end up having really cool conversations with. Those people moved here for a reason, or they're from here, but that's the type of community that I want to live in. That's the kind of community I want my family to live in, and that's the kind of community I want my daughter to grow up in. And what better place than to do it here in Newberg?
Patrick?
Good evening. And what is your understanding of the role of a counselor, and what has prepared you to be a counselor?
So, since I became aware of this opening, what I do in my field, I'm an expert. I'm a hydraulic and fluid dynamic expert with pumps. I go in, I solve problems, exhaust all options with the customer to try to figure out how to make the situation right. How to fix the issue. Now, I don't have any experience with committees or being on a council previously, but in order to solve a problem, you have to look at all angles. You have to look at very complex issues and analyze and ask questions. I mean, don't just think you know the answer. If you don't, go ask an expert, right? So don't just assume that your personal opinion is always what counts, but if you do that and you study and you become the expert in your field, and I know being on council, you can't be an expert in all these things, and that's, Stephen, that's what you had brought up, is that everybody kind of brings something different to the table. Someone's an expert in something, right? So part of the understanding of being in this role is obviously attending the meetings. You know, the charter says, I think it's once a month, but you guys have been meeting twice a month. There's a lot of complex things going on right now, so that's going to require more meetings. Right after I found out and I put my application, I had to fly back to Seneca Falls, New York, where my corporate headquarters is. And the first two agenda documents were 800 pages. And that whole flight, with layovers, 12 hours, I read both of those agendas. And since then, I've been reading the Planning Commission agenda, the Budget Committee agenda, the ad hoc agendas. Pretty much anything that pops up on the website is available to read. I put it on my iPad, and whether I'm traveling, because I do travel about 50% of the time for work by vehicle, I don't always fly. I'm spending time in my hotel room because I'm really committed to this, and I really want to bring my skills to the table. But to do that, you have to be able to read, understand what you're reading, take in all the facts, draft up a bunch of questions, and bring those to the meetings. And I'm committed to doing that. I've also read the city charter and the council rules. So, the second part to that question. Okay, I think that was it.
Hi, Matthew. Share with us your assessment of any recent decision of the City Council, and what do you feel is the most critical issue facing the city of Newberg today?
So again, sharing that I don't have a lot of experience with committees or being involved with council. It's hard for me to assess, of being in your shoes, of coming to make decisions on some of these complex issues that I've seen in the last 3 meetings. So without being in that role, it's really hard to judge. It's really hard to understand where everybody's coming from, but listening to the way what everybody brings to the table, the questions, whether it's Kinney, Bacon, Johnson, Essen, and Corey, who's not here, everybody brings something so much different. And right when you think that you have your mind made up and you listen to somebody, you're like, I never even think about that. So maybe I need to reconsider. And so I respect the process. If that, the process is there for a reason, and I believe in it. And so, any of the recent decisions I can't assess for you, but
I sat back there for a year before I ran, and I thought I had all the answers until I sat here. And now I'm never sure, even when I come to the meeting. And so I get that.
In particular, the last two meetings, sitting in the back, listening to this, everybody talking, everybody brings so much to the community. I think there's a huge opportunity as well as to really listen and get everybody's ideas together and to bridge that gap maybe that there is sometimes between our community and the council. And the second part to that question, the most critical issue that I think Newberg is facing is growth. The fact is that we have people from California, China, we have people from all over the world that are coming to move to Oregon and Washington. What are we going to do about it? Folks in the Portland metropolitan area, they're moving out here because they can't afford to live there anymore. So one of the things that I'm passionate about is affordable housing. We need that, and people are coming here to look for it. So how do we do that in a sustainable way at the same time promoting economic development? We have to have it. Michelle had talked about, moving to Newberg, there's not enough jobs. Okay, well, let's attract some companies to come move here and create jobs, right? It depends on the land that we have available that can be developed for that, but, we have to really think about how we want this city to grow, the direction we want to go, and also take in consideration the traffic and roads and sewer and water and all the things that when people come in town we have to think about. But the bottom line is these are all the things that I'm excited about. I think there's going to be a lot of opportunity being on the council to discuss things like this. There's going to be committees to be on, which can be appointed by the mayor. And those are the hard issues that I want to work on with council and with the community to make sure that we're doing it the right way.
Scott? Yes. Matthew? Describe your understanding of the time commitment associated with serving on the city council. And are you prepared to meet it, especially considering your job that you have and the amount of time that involves? Do you think you'll be able to commit to this time that's necessary to do this position?
I wouldn't be sitting here right now talking to you all if I didn't have the time to do it. I do work from home. When I'm not traveling on the road, I have a home office. And so I do have quite a bit of free time. Other than traveling, I'll have time to make sure that I'm all up to date on before getting to meetings. But
follow on, if I may, on that one. Tell me about this traveling. The basic schedule, 2 times a month. The past 4 weeks, we've been meeting once a week.
Right.
And have another one scheduled for next week. How does that fit in with this traveling that you're talking about with your job?
So for the last 10 years, I've been a road warrior, and I've always worked from home, and I make my own schedule. So committing to this, I've already talked to my company about it, and they're supportive of moving forward in this position. I'm able to move my schedule to be flexible around meetings and committees to commit to council and to other events. So yes, I'm committed. I have the time to do it. Like I said, I'm very, very passionate about anything that I get involved with, and this is something that I do feel very strongly about, and I'm very excited to have the opportunity just to be sitting here. So You know, and the most important part of it is that I have the support of my family. I have the support of my wife, and I have support of my my in-laws. And I think that's an important part, because there's going to be sacrifices that need to be made to make sure that, you know, if we need to meet after hours with citizens, or, you know, whatever extracurricular, you said you're going to a dinner and you're meeting with the senator, you know, those are all very important things. And if you don't have the support of your family and the support of your employer, it'd be hard to be in this position. So, but I am committed and I am willing to do it. I'm happy to do it.
Do you have a follow-on before my final question?
Yes, about the travel.
Thank you.
I think everybody wrote down here a travel schedule question mark. I think that you answered the question, but is your boss or the person that you immediately report to comfortable with the idea is that you are obligated the first and the third Mondays of every month, except if Monday's a holiday, then it's going to be the next day, Tuesday, besides all of the special meetings that these two guys, you know, put on our schedule. He's comfortable with that? She's comfortable with that?
Yes, he is comfortable with that.
All right.
So,
you mentioned your wife. You realize that a 3-week vacation is out of the question. You'll be lucky if you can slide in a 10-day vacation. All right? You realize that?
I do.
Okay.
Yes.
Because my wife, she understood that I ended up being obligated to certain vacation times, and it was, you know, and I love my wife, but, you know, some weeks are just, sorry, Jerry,
Right.
out of luck, you know, that type of thing. So I'm looking forward to retiring from the council because I can fit in that European vacation and those
Right.
other things, you know, that we've been talking about.
Right.
But they are comfortable with that.
Yes, sir.
Good. I wanted to compliment you on your answer to number 6. I think growth is probably one of the most significant concerns that we have. Helen, you asked a question about a master plan. How many do you have? Do you have 23 volumes or 28 volumes behind your desk?
At least 22.
Yeah, of things that we're continually drawing our attention to make sure that everything's up to date, and then Suppy always comes to a meeting and says, well, you overlooked that detail in volume number 10 on such and such a date down there. You know, we have, there are some consummate bureaucrats that attend the meeting every once in a while to keep us on the straight and narrow. But growth, it influences how we feel about the Villa Road project. And you've been baptized with fire the last couple of weeks. Because, you know, those meetings, lasted till 12 o'clock. You did take a vacation in the middle of the last week sometime or whatever. But
may I get to my last question?
well, yeah, you can. But I mean, I'm talking about the travel and the time and the growth. I thought that your filter or your point of view was there because so many of the decisions that this person is going to have to make is really concentrated on growth and how we grow. And you mentioned location. You know, we're kind of an isolated community. We have some obvious borders to the northeast, south, and west, but was there. And Bob, do you have another question?
Well, I did have, thank you. Matthew, do you have any questions for us?
Well, Stephen kind of already answered one of them, but I will see if there's anybody else on the council who would like to answer that. One of them was, get my notes together here. I'll start with that one. Has being on council affected your personal life? If anybody cares to answer.
I think you just heard that answer.
Well, I did. I heard from one council person.
It does. It impacts your personal life.
Yeah.
Because it is a commitment. And I think it's very important to know that you have that family that will be supportive of it. But yes, it is, and it requires some adjusting of your time and your resources.
Thank you.
Another question?
We're gonna.
Oh, let's start with came up first.
She did. Yeah.
Her did?
My husband no longer goes with me to Fred Meyer for milk because it's never the 30 seconds in, 30 seconds out. I could be in there for hours. And that's my personality. I like to talk to people about, when they stop, I'm willing to chat, and I'm okay with it. But if we're in a hurry, he does go in instead.
Thank you.
You mentioned you like to become an expert at topics. I'm going to be real blunt. I'm not the counselor up here that's going to attend all the community events, because I'm going to be sitting in dispatch or reading a book or reading a master plan or talking to some expert about white oak trees or talking to TVFNR on a day and sneaking a coffee break in so I can run up to the North Wilsonville station and meet with them. And I would say this, is that what I've learned from being up here is that city council is a beast, and you have to feed it, but you have to pick how much you feed it. And it can take over. And I'll give you a very specific example. This weekend, my wife is off, the kids are in camp. Saturday, we're going to go to the beach. We're going to go to Depot Bay. We're going to have fun. We're going to watch whales. We go out there, my phone is going crazy about oak trees and Villa Road. It's a very important topic. I am not, but at one point my wife turned to me, because I'm sitting there, and she said to me, "Can you just turn that off?" And you know what? I did. And you have to be disciplined enough, and this is for all the candidates, you have to be disciplined enough to say, okay, I have this much time to give, I'm going to do everything I can to feel comfortable, and then I got to stop. And that's, I think, the biggest lesson you'll learn up here. It's not, the capacity of high volume sewer pipes. It's, how do I do this and keep my job happy and keep my wife happy and keep this guy over here happy?
Right.
That's the balance. So,
and to that point, with my work experience, one of the things I do bring to the table is being able to be a good multitasker. I've had to learn that over the years. So it's not always preferable when you do take a vacation and you got to bring your laptop and you got a customer call on the weekend or the middle of the night, right? So I do have the discipline to do that because I've had the experience doing that. But I appreciate that you brought that up because that's a very good point. I think being humble and understanding that you don't know the process is going to be a big part of it if I am chosen. But I appreciate that. So.
I would answer that too. I told my wife, yes, sir, thank you. Sometimes I have to remember that Bob's supposed to tell me before I go. But anyway, I told my wife that this is going to be a 2-meeting-a-month deal, not to worry about a thing. And she said to me about 6 months in, liar. But on the other hand, it just depends on, you got to remember that there's staff here that's doing a lot of the work for you, and I have to remember that too, that when you get those packets, somebody's already done all the work. And you're involved as much as you want to be. The mayor depends on a lot of committees, and if you're able to help him on the committees, I'm sure he's looking for help. Or any of the counselors any of the candidates, because there's a lot of work to get done, and it's done through committees. But you're in control. Nobody can tell you, other than, you're committed to come to the meetings, but you have to, your life is yours, and your family's more important than this. So, sorry, it just is. And so, yeah, I think, with being a salesman or being anybody else that's a candidate, they know what their schedule is. But it is important to know that you're here to make a difference, and as much time as you can put in is going to help.
Thank you.
I did have one more thing, being serious. Yeah. I think the hardest thing for my family was sometimes people are going to disagree with you, and they will personally take that out on you. And the first time my husband heard, "I hate your wife," was really hard for him. And it took, I've been doing this 9 years now, it's still hard for him, but now he at least understands that they don't really hate me, because they don't know me.
Right.
They hate a decision I made, or they disagreed with me, and they didn't have all the information that I had anyway. So that's hard for him, and that's hard for my son, who's 16, but they both believe in the work that I do, and they're willing, they understand it, and they don't take it personal anymore, but it is hard at first.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Unless you have another question.
You've answered my questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your stick around. We appreciate it. We thank all
Appreciate
three of you for taking the time to interview with us this evening. We will be having this discussion later as to the final selection. And with that, we're going to take a 10-minute break, and then we will reconvene, and we will begin the discussion about calling for an election for annexation with TBF&R.
Thank you. What's your thing? Concerned about age, but I can't answer that question. The elephant we never discussed, how we get around this thing, is that this has to be a harmonious council in regards to annexation, and then this chart of business here. Is it appropriate to ask the three questions, or ask the three candidates how they're going to navigate their way through that annexation chart? It's not a litmus test, but it is the elephant. That's only my 2 bits.
Which of the three, which way are you?
Give me a minute.
Okay.
I like Helen because she's been so dedicated to the process. That's the reason why I said
Unfortunately, it's not my choice.
yeah. Too young. I'd like to know what.
You don't know that from anybody.
So how are they treating you?
Okay.
Good.
Yeah, I just got back from my 2-week vacation, so I'm still trying to get with it.
Oh.
Once you're gone for 2 weeks, and you come back. I went to Eastern Oregon for a week.
Oh, how
And then the other week I was home. But, yeah, it was
That's nice.
my first day back, so, yeah.
Joe's back, but he's going again, right?
I don't know, not that I know of. I'm not sure. Yeah, I think he's done for a while. TV for no annexation from Mon Law. I just placed it under Roberts, so I'm not sure if they're both undecided. Okay.
Even better.
If the councilors would take their seats, please. We're going to reconvene, and we will now move to the second item under new business, which is the consideration of Resolution 2017-3394. This is a resolution calling for an election to the city of... You have something?
Coordinating, sorry.
To have an election in the city of Newberg on November 7, 2017, to consider an annexation of Newberg into the Tualatin Valley Fire and Rescue District to receive fire and emergency medical services, and approving the ballot measure and explanatory statement. Staff presentation, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Truman Stone, City Attorney. As the council will remember, the council proposed annexation into Tualatin Valley Fire and Rescue by resolution on July 17th, 2017. That proposal was sent to the Tualatin Valley Fire and Rescue Board, which adopted a resolution approving annexation, in part conditioned on an election of the voters in the city. And so what you have tonight is a resolution calling for an election. So that's the first thing this does, and the election would be called on November 7th of this year. The second thing this does is it approves the information that needs to go to the ballot to be placed on the ballot for the election. So there is a ballot title, there is a question presented, there is a summary of the question, and then finally there is an explanatory statement, which is a neutral explanation of the effect of the vote, either pro or con. So those are what are before you tonight for your consideration and approval. And that concludes my report.
Question, if I may, Mr. Stone, on page 3 of 3 of this particular Exhibit B, I have a ballot title and an explanatory statement, and then there is one other item in there that doesn't have a caption to it. What is that?
Three of 3 is the continuation of the explanatory statement on Exhibit B.
And what was the other one that you were talking about then?
Well, if you look at page 1 of Exhibit B, where it says ballot title.
I do.
So the first section there is the actual title. The second section is the question: shall Newberg annex into Tualatin Valley Fire and Rescue District to receive fire, emergency, medical, and ambulance services? And then the third part on that same page is the summary. Then what follows on page 2 and continues on to page 3 is the explanatory statement.
Thank you.
And for each one of these, there's statutory limits. So the limit for the title is 10 words. It's 20 words for the question, 175 words for the summary, and 500 words for the explanatory statement. So they kind of build from simple to more detail as you go along.
Council have any questions of staff at this time? Councilor Essen.
Yes, I have a
Councilor Johnson.
I have a question for the city manager. Do we have things ironed out as far as what the agreement's gonna be with TVF&R, what are they gonna expect of us, and what are we gonna expect of them? In particular, the firehouses, what did they ever decide to do with those?
Mayor and Council, Joe Hannon, your city manager. Have the particulars been worked out? No. Have some general guidelines been set between the chief and myself and his staff, and then to the committee that we have with the council president, the mayor, and 2 of their board members. And basically, I'll outline this, and I'll tell you where the time frame to come back to council before the election, before even the information campaign goes out. First, under any of the circumstances, one of the plans is there's no change to the fire stations. So that means there's 2 fire stations. They'll continue operation after annexation and for the foreseeable future. The question that came up with Mr. Marung, Kevin, on the last time was, what about the cost of the equipment and the facilities? So what we have done, or what I've done with the fire district, is shared. We don't have an appraisal, but I've shared the value of the property that we use for insurance. So they have that, and so what the conversation has gone back and forth is that by the time we get to September's work session, where Matt and I will be presenting with you a look at next year's budget and also the communications budget, then within that will also be a proposal to talk about the stations, the disposition of them, the equipment, and the big equipment here, we're talking about the rolling stock, like the ladder truck and that. Things like turnouts, jaws for life, and that. Where I believe it's going to go in, and what I have given as a position to the chief and his staff, as I've said, for next year, and as part of all this transition we have a communication upgrade that's, I don't really have a easy source of money outside of going to the voters for something like that to pay for the communication upgrade, which is estimated at about $3.4 million. That's the numbers we've been using. Of that $3.4 million, there is one portion of that directly relates our police department, as we're serving Newberg and Dundee, and fire services. So Tualatin Fire, both serving the city here and what would be the extended ambulance district area. So what I believe is that there will be some proposal back and forth that talks about a participation of the fire district in helping to fund that. And I think that's where we'll do the complete accounting. We'll bring it to the council. I know that it needs to be resolved before we get into those that are doing the public information campaign about the annexation of what the costs are. We are collecting the data now to meet, which I knew you wanted also, but what Kevin Marang wanted is saying, tell us what the cost and the value of the facilities. We'll have that shortly. We're working on it. So is it completely resolved yet? No. Are we going down the road of identifying all of the resources and us saying, well, how does a transfer go between the two and how is that accounted for? And I know I have to bring that back, and my goal in that one is to do it as part of our discussion for the budget and the communications funding.
Councilor Johnson?
So my question is a hypothetical. And this might be for Truman too. Just so I understand how this works. So tonight we vote, not if we're in favor of Tualatin Valley Fire and Rescue taking over, but if we want the voters to make that decision. Is that correct?
That's correct. You're calling for a vote on this issue.
Okay. So my second question is, let's say voters pass that. Okay. In 18 months, 2 years, where do citizens go if they have issues with Tuolumne Valley Fire and Rescue and their policies about responding to different calls, or, you know, response times and those types of things? Where would they go?
Mayor?
City manager?
So the idea is that when, and let's take the analogy for Central Oregon Park and Rec District, okay? Because they would be the same. TVFNR is a legal entity. They're a government just like the city is. They have budgets, they have elected board. And if someone in town says, you know, that there were calls out and the ambulance got there too slow, or somebody's house burned down, what they would do, and again, TVR is a little bit bigger organization than we are, is that they have, like we have now, you have the local station. So a person might go to it might go to the officer in charge of whichever station, 20 or 21, and say, what happened? I want to know. Well, they'll answer the question there. If they're not satisfied with that, one of the people that's here tonight is Chief Sherrard is here, and he's assigned, the way TVFNR divides up all their cities, is that their command staff, this is just the first level below the chief, he'll answer the questions. And if he doesn't know it locally, he'll get information. One of the things that TVFNR is very good at, which is one of the reasons why you're hearing me and staff saying we think this is a good idea, is that they're very information centric. They run their operations finding how fast do people respond, where are they going, which rigs are going, and how much does it cost. From that side, they'll answer the question. But also when you get to the point of Chief Sherrard and the next level up with the chief, or later with the elected, then you can get into policy. And a resident goes, well, I don't know about all that stuff, but, you know, are people dying of heart attacks because, you know, you're not spending the right money, or when are you going to close the station? At that level of the chief, Chief Sherrard and Chief Dyke, they can answer those questions, and that's where they would go. Now, they might come also to the city, like we do with CPRD. A lot of times, people don't think about government. They just kind of go, well, there's police and there's fire. That must be the city people. They'll come to us. Sometimes we will. We'll try to answer the questions. Staff, including me and, say, Public Works or something, may very well call the local, then might call Chief Sherrard and say, this is the question came up. If it's something that comes up frequently, we might put it on our website. We'll always have the linking of the two, or we'll call that person back and say, here's the person who you want to talk. And that's exactly the way it happens with CPRD. When the trees got cut someplace, since we've been talking about trees a lot, well, they go, oh, the city, you cut down all the trees, and said, what's your question? So we try to get them to the right person. And much like Chief Sherrard, we might go to Brian Stewart, who does the trees. He can't answer it technically. You go to a policy one, Don Clement, and then go to another elected body.
And I have a follow-on. So you mentioned the communication issue. My question to you, Joe, is with that upgrade, that $3.4 million upgrade, will the way we dispatch send calls from our dispatch center to WACA, is there a potential that could be streamlined with that upgrade?
Answer is yes. And how does it get streamlined? Even if we would not have gone with the annexation or changed anything like that, we have a software system that's referred to as the CAD, Computer-Aided Dispatch. Right now, when calls come into us, and they come in a lot of different ways, and depending on cells, sometimes they can go to another center and then come back to us and then maybe get dispatched. That's done electronically, and the proposal that we would have done even if we wouldn't have had the upgrade to the 800 megahertz system, which involves more of our radios. But our dispatch is upgrading to the same system that WACA has for all the other agencies. That will allow for a quicker interface and an immediate sharing of information when our person who ends up a call taker is getting information from someone and then it's transferred electronically. It shows up on the screen of our dispatch center or will, and it shows up on theirs. So yes, that's going to improve.
Follow on?
So in the case of an emergency, such as the earthquake, now I listened to a recent dispatch, and that was a big mistake, human error, but it started with someone being on hold, with our dispatcher being on hold for a while. If we were to have a big emergency and lines were down, how would we contact WACA to get them to dispatch the fire right next door?
Okay, so there's two situations what you're talking about. One is if everything goes down and we're cut off from any other dispatching center, we have the capability, or what we're working on, including with this new system that we're going to buy, for particularly for radios, but it's what we would do right now, is that we'd go remote. We can take the components of what a dispatch terminal is and go to another public works building or go to the outside under a tent. We can use the radios that so one of the things that the radios that we buy for our officers right now, and will continue to finish with the upgrade, are between $6,000 and $8,000 each. It's very expensive. But one of the capabilities of those is that we literally can dispatch from radio to radio. And so that would happen in that system. Now the other thing that's going on as part of the upgrade, and it's a decision to be made, and that will be presented to you at least going to be in September. I'm looking for Matt. It may be a meeting before that we're going to look at. We've already made the decision, or council made the decision, and I'm using as direction to the police department, is to keep our 911 system. The question is, we're going to upgrade under either any kind of a scenario with the dispatch, but you're going to have to make a decision, will be presented to you, and there's a difference in cost of whether it's an independent 911 center, irregardless of if WACA goes down. And one of the components of that is a requirement that if we are to have the capability of being independent, standalone, may very well be a fiber link, and a fiber link not over the way we have it now, over poles, but going underground to secure it, that then the link goes a dedicated line from Newberg to the center in Washington County. And that's going to be a decision. So we're researching both for the cost.
Follow on?
This is more of a timeline question. Obviously, there's a lot of citizen attention put on this. What is your specific timeline? I know you said September. I'm just trying to get a picture of what you're going to present to us in September. Does that include, because what I see is as much transparency as possible in this is going to help us. Are you going to give us a breakdown of, okay, this engine is this much, this fire station is this much, this is what we're getting from TVF&R, this is what we think it's worth, this is, so that way we can analyze it and make sure, the public understands this is the full picture of the deal?
Yes. At the latest, you're going to get it at the work session where we're using that to see how it fits with the budget, paying for the communication in next year. But what's likely is you'll have that information before, which is just flat information. It's going to say, here's all of our equipment, and this is what the value is, without going to the extra expense. And I'll put that as a caveat of getting appraisal on the fire stations. But yes, you'll have all that. But then we'll put it into a context when we get before it's out to the public as part of an explanation of annexation, we'll say, and here's why we need that, is that one of the questions to be answered that people say, well, if we don't annex, okay, then we're going to reconstitute a department, we're going to come up. So we use the equipment we have, the value of that, the age, and say, okay, if we don't go and we recreate a department, and we've done this once and we shared that with the council, it'll be even more detail and say, then we have to buy certain kinds of equipment to give us what the current level of service that we get right now, response. So you'll have all that.
Councilor McKinney?
Here's some interesting things that I discovered during the process. When I went to the academy, I was able to stay at Wilsonville over there by Costco. That is a hardened station. It is built to withstand, what, 10 or more? Something like that, 10 points of the Richter scale or something like that. They were very proud of the building, but in other words, you know, there's going to be something in proximity to us that might withstand the Cascadia event. A lot of the equipment that Chief Gerard has available to him right now, a lot of that equipment already belongs to Tualatin Valley Fire in relationship to keeping the present level of service that we enjoy that's there. Chief Gerard could talk about those independently if you had questions, you know, for him there. We had two American LaFrance engines down. One of those engines is back in service with the Newberg name on it, and the other one, I understand, is in the pipeline to be made usable there. So that's been a rather positive link here. The thing that I was unaware of, and when we attended the last meeting at the in their board chambers, is Tualatin Valley, at their own expense, provided 2 fiber optic lines, some of which Joe mentioned here, in terms of making sure that we're prepared in this communication business that we're talking about. So all of these incremental steps help prepare us for that worst case scenario that might be coming along. And if I'm mistaken, you're free to correct me here. But so much of what just the intergovernmental contract has provided us for year 1 or year 2 has dealt with the major engine ambulance equipment problems there that have been very much in our favor. I know that these questions about negotiations, keep coming up, but in the timeline, there's some hoops that we'll go through before we actually have our city attorney launch into the negotiation documents that's now through there. But I've been impressed, and I'm not trying to sell anybody, I've been impressed with the incremental steps to take care of some of these issues that's one of the reasons why you sat in dispatch that night, was to find out, and there should be a reasonable explanation for every question.
Any other comments right now for staff? Councilor Eisen.
I guess what I wouldn't want to hear is, which I have heard rumors that, no rumors, I was told directly that TVF&R had no intention of paying anything. So I'm just hoping that if that's the case, we at least retain some of this valuable property as a lease. And that would be the only thing I would be concerned, is that we don't give it up for nothing, that when then, okay, then we'll give it to you for a lease, or you make all the decisions. But I'd be very sad to hear that
we gave all that property away and didn't get anything for it, especially since we're going to spend $3.5 million, I think, on a radio system. Where we're going to get that money, I don't know, because one of the suggestions you had was, you know, sell that property to the fire district.
So, Mayor?
City Manager.
So the council decides all this, okay? We're in discussions. You're right. I was the one who suggested early on and said, well, what about selling the stations to you, and you have the station, we get some money to pay for communications. So they've heard that. Chief Dyke has heard that from me. We, not just with the annexation, but the city has, in addition to the annexation, the issue of the communications upgrade. And part of the communication upgrade obviously is going to involve Tualatin Fire because of dispatching the fire and their ambulance service, and it's going to involve the city of Dundee, both because of Dundee Fire and the Dundee Police Department for us. So what we've done is we've sat down with all those and said, okay, here are all our different challenges. We've gone to, there haven't been a lot of cities that have annexed to districts, but there have been a few. You know, Westland is obviously the last one. Before that, going all the way to the formation of TVFNR, Beaverton, Oregon City, they had contemplating with TVFNR, and I think they had a relationship with TVFNR one time. They annexed and used Clackamas. So we've taken each one of those models, and each one is different, and shared what's going on and said what makes the most sense. And we're not waiting until the last minute so that we go, oh, we get making a decision that's, 1 month before the annexation. We introduced the idea. We knew it was going to be a challenging discussion. Also knew that it had to come back to the city council to make that decision, and it has to be done with enough time so the information gets out, so when the public is looking at annexation, and particularly if they get to a point where do we go with TVFNR or do we reconstitute a department, that we had to have those numbers. So we're close. Same thing when Mr. Morau brought the issue up, we were already working on it. So Chief Holman was already starting that. And if you remember just maybe 2-3 meetings ago, there was a large spreadsheet that we did that and said, what is the cost of reconstituting the department? And that spreadsheet is about as detailed as you can get. It's got people on it. It's got, the specific firemen of what would happen if these came back, all their benefits calculated out. There's equipment line item. Now we're getting even more detailed that the line item has these specific engines, what they are worth, and how does that relate. So most of it is already there, and that's public information for anyone to have just from look back in our past meeting.
We have 2 people that have signed up that want to talk to us or make a presentation. Again, I remind the people in the area of public comments that we would like to have you confine your comments to a 5-minute period, and I will invite you to the table. The first person is Mr. Robert Suppy. If you'd come forward, push the button, the drill. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Robert Suppy, and as always, thank you for the opportunity, and I'll be very brief tonight. So I have just a single issue to raise on this resolution. The issue of transfer of assets to TVFNR was raised tonight. It seems that TVFNR's position is very clear on this. I call your attention to item 4 of TVFNR's resolution, which reads that the annexation is subject to, quote, conveyance and turnover of all fire and emergency response assets, for example, fire stations, equipment, and apparatus, of the city to TVFNR. If we're already committing to the transfer of all assets, what leverage do we have during the negotiations with TVFNR? Thank you.
Any questions, comments? comments, City Manager?
Yes. Mayor, Council, Mr. Seppi. So when this first came out, so I went to Chief Dyke and I said, here's the language that's in there. What you don't see in there, and so you're hearing this publicly from me here, but it's been public and elsewhere, is that there's no cost in there. There's conveyance, but we haven't decided on what the value is and what is the amount that gets conveyed and how is that put in a total package. That's what we're working on now. So it does say conveyance. Have no issue with that at all, that we can convey it. It could come on a lease. It could come, I mean, there's a lot of different kinds of things where the issue with some of the other annexations where do we have to recreate, do we have to build another fire station? Do we have to go out and get a bunch of equipment? Saying no, but the value has not been set yet.
So to be clear, you would consider a lease to be one way of conveying this?
Could be, yes, yeah.
Okay.
The convey is the use of, that's the operative word there.
I didn't see use of in there. It was turn over the equipment, which is why I had concerns about a lease, because I'm not a legal person. I don't see that as conveying, but if you do, and that's how negotiations going, that's fine. Thank you.
So, and that's why we got a good attorney, so if I come back, but what I've said is what I've told or requested of the fire district, and that's what I'll bring back to council.
Mr. Lonwall?
Oh boy, lawn wall. Hi folks. I don't have anything written down, so I'll attempt to stay on track here. What would I do coming to a city council meeting and sitting on a nice, that the weather's cooled down Monday night? Strangely enough, what I'm here about is to congratulate all of you. Staff, mayor, council, several of us asked that we thought it was important that the citizens got to vote on this, and that's the first part of this. It looks like you're going to do that. I assume you're going to vote for it. And secondly, we were concerned about that 38% in the general fund. That's being addressed as well, which I hope will stay on that path. I'm very happy with you guys. You should be very happy representing the citizens of Oregon, or the citizens of Newberg, taxpayers this way, and keeping their interests at heart. As far as the changeover to Tualatin Valley, there are a lot of issues involved with that. Being that the public's going to get to vote on it means they're all going to be discussed. It's going to come out in the open, and I think that's appropriate. Some of the concerns that have been mentioned tonight, I'm sure those things will all be discussed. Remembering the elder George Bush, who said, "Read my lips, no new taxes," one thing that I've learned from being involved with city government is that you don't make absolute statements when you don't know all the facts. Now, in the absence, I hope I don't say this again, but in the absence of any arguments telling me why I shouldn't vote for the changeover to Tualatin Valley Fire and Rescue, I think it's a great idea. It looks like a good idea. It'll keep the city out of a lot of trouble. It looks pretty good. Those issues will be debated, and people will vote on it. On the second issue, it's kind of a strange thing. When you go to the ballot box and you vote on something, you vote yes or no usually, and you expect certain things to happen if you vote no. Well, there's sort of a booby trap in the second charter amendment, and that's the little 3% thing. If for some reason the citizens decide they don't want to vote for it because they don't want to pay that 3%, then they get something much worse. They don't get no tax increase. They get a much bigger tax increase by default. That is, unless some other people in town decide to put another charter amendment through. if it were just me, just between you and me, the 3% increase that's figured into the second charter amendment and the 20-cent per thousand increase in the changeover to TVF&R, I don't have a big problem with those. I sat on the budget committee long enough to know that the fire service could use the extra money. To think that we could hold them without increases like this probably is not realistic. So for me personally, as a voter and a taxpayer, the 3% doesn't bother me that much. But I think we're trying to get people to vote for these issues and to accept them, and I don't really want to give them any ammunition or ambiguity as to what they're voting for or why. I would feel better if the 3% were out of the second charter amendment, but it's not the end of the world. I love you guys. So far, you've done a wonderful job. There was a time years ago when I never thought I'd come up to a council and say something like that, but nevertheless, here I am. Any questions?
I'll leave well enough alone.
Thank you.
Any questions or comments for Lon? Councilor McKinney.
Thank you, Lon. I appreciate it very much, and I know that it took a lot of energy to get you up here to be able to do that, and everything else.
It was just really tough.
And I was glad to note that there's still a measure of trust involved with all of us as we're trying to be good citizens and good counselors and everything else here. And I'm glad that you pointed to the realities of situations, is that things can't stay the same forever. There are some things that come along and require an expenditure to be able to make progress, one way or the other. So I appreciate your comments. I appreciate your service. And now we just need to get this to a successful resolution. And I hope that we can count on your endorsement to help bring this to pass.
Onward and upward.
Thank you, Lon. Appreciate it. You have before you the question of approving the ballot title. Give me the proper terms, City Attorney. The ballot title,
The question, the summary, and the explanatory statement.
Thank you. Pleasure of the council. Councilor Bacon.
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that we adopt resolution number 2017-3394.
It has been moved to adopt resolution 2017-3394, calling for an election in the city of Newberg on November 7 to consider the annexation of Newberg into the Tualatin Valley Fire and Rescue District to receive fire and emergency medical service, and approving the ballot title and explanatory statement. Is there a second? Been seconded? Essen? Is there any further discussion? I will, Councilor Johnson, go ahead.
Oh, okay. So, over the time I've been on council, this has come up, and I've put a lot of time into looking into this. From where I sit, we're buying a Ferrari, and right now we're still trying to figure out all the bells and whistles. I have a lot of confidence in our staff and in TVF and our staff to address any issues that come up. Whenever I've found a problem, I kind of think of my job here on city council as I find problems and I poke them, and I see what happens. And what I've learned over the course of the last month really, is when I poke a problem with Tualatin Valley Fire and Rescue and our dispatch center and our police and our staff, on this issue especially, the response is overwhelming and it is factual. So residents will come up to me and say, well, what about this? This means we shouldn't do it. And I'll get dates and times and stories. And so I'll run to the dispatch center, or I'll run to the police chief, or I'll run to Wilsonville and talk to them, and to Tualatin Valley Fire and Rescue, and they come back and they say, well, here's the paperwork, here's the report, here's a spreadsheet, here's a, and here's the person that responded, you want to talk to them, and oh, by the way, you can have lunch with this person, and they can tell you what happened, no, I was on the call. And so every single issue I've found, it's been resolved. Or there's a plan in place to deal with it. Does that mean I don't think there's any issues with this? No, I think there's still some little areas that can be worked on, but I'm confident over the next few months that they're going to keep trying to streamline it and make the case. I'm really curious about, what we're getting for buildings. I'm really curious about how the relationship between our police department and our new fire department is going to work. I'm really interested in how the whole dispatch is going to work. I've never thought about how dispatch worked before, and I'm getting an education. The only hesitation I have, and this is really for the voters to decide, is it's a local control issue. When I've been working with, covering as a reporter, person as a member of a chamber of commerce, so I've been exposed to Tualatin Valley Fire and Rescue for probably 15 years. And what I can say is this, is that I am also fairly confident is that after the fact, and they're in control, that if any citizen has an issue and they stop by the station or they call out to Hillsborough, they're going to get answers. What makes me a little nervous, and it's just my cynical nature, is that we as Newberg, it's going to be real tough for us to get a seat on that board just from an election standpoint. And I worry about that a little, but that's a political problem. And so I support this. I think I hope the citizens, I know we have smart voters, and I know they're going to look at this and they're going to make their own call. And that makes it real easy for me because it doesn't make me feel like I'm deciding where our fire department's going, because trust me, this is life and death stuff. And we can have arguments about trees and about widening roads and about all kinds of recycling wine bottles. But when you talk about this stuff, it's important. And I would hope that everybody would look into it and learn what they can about it and know that I feel comfortable in sending it out there. I think it could really benefit not only the city, but also the fire district. So I'm looking forward to a good partnership. That's why I'm supporting this.
Councilor McKinney.
I too am going to support the resolution. I'm so confident that this is the right thing to do that I would have supported the resolution had they just asked the 6 councilors and the mayor for permission to annex. We've kind of gone the extra mile in sending this to a vote of the people, but this makes so much financial sense. This makes so much, and I'll tell you one reason only, is that we will no longer be responsible for the benefits and the retirement of firefighters. It will save us millions of dollars as citizens of Newberg. Let that sink in a minute. But it brings us 26 stations. If somebody falls in a ditch, they'll send a ditch crew. If a building falls down, they'll send an extraction crew. If we need mutual aid, we won't have to rely upon somebody else. We've got trained people, men and women, ready to assist to make this continue to be a superior fire department. We've been used to a Ferrari for not very many dollars, but we are certainly not at the wrong end of the stick on this particular deal. Patrick, you reminded me is that we already have a relationship between fire department and police. It gets worked out every day. We already have a relationship between our 911 center and WACA. Fire and police gets worked out every day. So there's a number of things that are just here. I'm hopeful. I think that the citizens of Newberg are going to overwhelmingly support the annexation of the Newberg fire and rescue needs into this new district, just because it makes a lot of sense. When I've had coffee with some people in this room or out here, I have yet to meet a person. I have yet to meet a person that tells me that this is not a good deal. I have yet to meet one person that tells me this is not the right thing to do. Now you know I believe in this, and I'm going to cast my vote in favor of doing that. I would have cast my vote in towards annexation, even if they just asked, which their board did, even if it was just the councilors and the mayor. This is the right thing to do. I'm glad to cast a vote in favor of this.
Councilor Harris.
Well, it seems like the people I've been working with have said, everybody in my neighborhood, any place I go, have said, we want to vote. So I had no trouble voting, seconding the motion, because that's been the rallying cry of everyone, and so we've got to vote. And that's right. My nightmare would be that the answer would be no, because it would be worse. We'd be in a heck of a spot. And to me, it's scary. It's a big change. We won't have control. It'll be another board. But I went down to the station, and all the guys in the stations, not all of them, but many of them had been, I had gone to work for 12, and I was so happy to get shipped back. So we got a lot of firemen back out of this, which I was kind of surprised to find out that had been here before. And then I went on the Tualatin Fire District website, and believe it or not, they have to sell it to their people. And there was a whole list of why they should do it. And I looked at all that stuff and I said, gee, because this has got to be sold to Tualatin Fire Districts, not just our voters, what we think, but they got to take us on too. So they're doing a real good job of explaining why we should come on board. A lot more money, pooling of resources so you can get cheaper prices, and then it just went on and on about all the good reasons why you have to do it. But yeah, this has been this has been a battle. I don't know how many hours we spent on this, but many more than this office, and talking to people and working. So I'm very happy to vote on this one, yes.
I'll be voting yes on this one. Very hesitant to, in the very beginning, this was kind of a type of thing. Do we want to even consider this? And then as we got into the discussions on it, it became progressively more apparent that we had to look at some alternative way of being able to continue the level of fire service that this community desired. And in that was the initial statement that, yes, there would be a vote of the people to do the annexation. Further exploration of this issue in the code, in the Oregon revised statutes, indicated there might be another alternative, but I felt that we were committed to extending a vote to the people, and I'm very satisfied that you, the council, have brought this to our attention, and we have this now as an action to take, that we give our citizens that right to vote on it. I concur with Councilor McKinney and with others that a yes vote on this annexation is the right way, but I think it is also right that we extend the opportunity for you, the electorate, or for our electorate, to be able to share that decision with us. So with that, I will be voting affirmative on this resolution. Is there anybody else?
Call for the question.
The question has been called for. Division of the House, please.
Counselor Essen?
Yes.
Counselor Johnson?
Yes.
Counselor Bacon?
Yes.
Counselor McKinney?
Yes.
Mayor Andrews?
Yes. Resolution 2017-3394 is adopted, 501. And with that, we will then move to Resolution 2017-3406. This is a resolution adopting a ballot title and explanatory statement and submitting a proposed charter amendment to the city voters, which would reduce the authority to levy ad valorem taxes, property taxes, contingent upon the annexation of the city into the Tualatin Valley Fire and Rescue District. City Attorney or City Manager? City Attorney.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. If you remember at the special council meeting on July 31st, the council passed a motion directing staff to draft a ballot measure amending the charter. And the motion had certain provisions in it. One was to reduce the property tax rate by $1.88 per $1,000 assessed value in the first fiscal year after annexation. A second point would be that the tax rate could be increased a maximum of 3% per fiscal year over the prior year's tax rate, and that any rate increase in excess of 3% per year would require going to the voters. And of course, that this measure would be contingent on the annexation passing. So that's what I've written in what's before you. So we have the resolution. This resolution also calls for an election on November 7th, 2017. It also, beginning on page 1 of Exhibit B, presents a ballot title, a question, a summary, and an explanatory statement. And then Exhibit A is the actual charter language that would be incorporated into the charter should this pass. And that, again, is a local property tax limitation. So in the first fiscal year, which would be 18-19, the maximum tax that the council, through the budget process, could levy would be $2.50 per thousand. And then commencing in fiscal year 1920, the most it could go up is 3% of that $2.50. So that would be 7.5 cents. Did I get the math right, Mr. Zuppi? It's always dangerous when attorneys...
Better arithmetic than mine the last time.
It's always dangerous when attorneys do math. And then, so each year you would look at the prior tax rate levied, and the maximum it could go up would be 3% of that prior tax year. And then if there was a desire or a need to increase it in an amount greater than that, then it would have to be approved by the voters. And of course, we talked about this at the prior meeting. If it went up a consistent 3% each year, it would take approximately 21 years to reach the permanent tax rate. And under the Oregon Constitution, that could not be exceeded. So the council would never have the authority to exceed that permanent tax rate. And that concludes my report.
Questions or comments from staff for the staff at this time? Councilor Essen.
Well, also when I read, I'm going to preface what my question. Also, what I read was their permanent tax rate over TVF&R is $1.52. And everything above that is going to go away at some point. It's going to get paid off, and they'll go back down to $1.52. We're freezing ours at $1.88. Ours will never go back down to $1.52. So that's what I don't like about this, but it's been explained to me that that's what we promised, was the $1.88. But that's one of the things I don't like about this. But the way I look at it is, you try making a salad, and sometimes some of the stuff got put in the salad you didn't want, but you eat salad or go hungry. So I guess I'm going to eat salad on this one. But I'm a little concerned about the fact that we're tied into a $1.88 rate when the whole rest of the district's going to have a $1.50 rate if it all goes away. So, but that's basically what we said we'd do.
City Attorney.
Mr. Mayor, just to be clear, we are, as this is proposed, or as I received instruction from the council, this is subtracting $1.88 from the current rate of $4.38. So we're taking the needle from $4.38, moving it back to $2.50, and then it could slowly, incrementally increase up to the maximum of the 438, which was established by the constitutional amendment.
Following. I guess I was looking at the rate we'd be paying. We'd be paying $1.50 to TVF&R, and then we'd be paying $1.88 over here. So somehow I wasn't sure how that all works out because I can't do the math in my head. But that bothered me. I'm just saying that this is a compromise. It's basically where I'm going, and I suppose it's a good one.
Councilor McKinney?
Let's try and make our way through the mud here. Their base rate is $1.52. They have an equipment levy and some other things there that raises it to $1.97. And then the rate, which tends to diminish and might soon be less than $2, is the third and final portion of that annexation vote there. So to participate and be fair at the district level, it would never be $1.52. It would be at least the $1.97, or at the most fair at the $2.07 or the $2.08 that it's going to get there. There was never a possibility of it being $1.52 because that's not what the district pays. All right. Now we've been fortunate that they've been part of a system that it was more than $2.08, and that it's been declining consistently here. It might not be very long before it's less than $2 again, all right, along the way. But as they retire that bond or their indebtedness or whatever it is, that has been consistently going down. But it's, Scott, in my mind, it was never $1.52. That's kind of a starting ground, and then there was some things that were there. Now, we're fortunate that in that system, they pay it off so well, or whatever, that it's going to work for us rather than against us in terms of whatever this is here. So I think that's a clearer explanation of what base rate is, what some of the other things. Am I correct, Chief Gerard?
That is correct. The base rate is $1.52.
Please come forward and identify yourself.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Councilor McKinney is correct in that the base rate is $1.52. We have a local option levy that is 45 cents, and then the remaining 10 cents are bonds, which, as the councilor mentioned, that the amount that's levied for those bonds has been decreasing each year, and that's based on the fact that we're retiring some of those bonds, as well as the assessed value of the district continues to rise. So over time, that number will continue to decrease.
Thank you, Chief. Are you through?
Yeah.
Councilor Johnson?
So, just to make sure I understand, Mr. Stone, we have a base rate of $4.38. In that, we were providing fire service. We asked Finance and Accounting to give us an account of how much it cost to do fire service, and they came back and said of $1.88. So the reason we're lowering it by $1.88 is because we're not providing that service anymore. Is that correct? Okay.
Essentially, yes. I mean, that's a simplified version of it. But the fundamental point, yes, because the city of Newberg will no longer provide fire, is my understanding why the council has proposed this charter amendment.
And what Tuolumne Valley Fire and Rescue does or doesn't do, that is completely independent from this charter amendment, because we're talking about what fire cost us in 2015 or 2016, whenever that was determined, not what it costs TVF&R. We're not reducing it what it costs them, we're reducing it what it costs us.
That's correct.
Okay, just so I'm clear. Okay, great, thank you.
Any other questions for staff at this time? I have two people signed up that would like to speak to us regarding this particular resolution. Again, the admonition of the 5-minute limit, I would appreciate it. And so far, you've done an outstanding job of doing that. So I'm going to call on Mr. Robert Suppy again, please.
Good evening and thank you. My name is Robert Suppy. I have a few comments to make on this matter. First of all, I'd like to thank the council for considering the only approach that provides a true limit on your levying authority, a charter amendment. Along with that, I would like to encourage you to respect the overwhelming public input that you've received to consider removing the potential annual increase of 3% tonight. I would hope that you would trust the public to support needed increases in the future. I emailed 2 technical issues to the council earlier today and would like to raise them here. The first is the use in the resolution and elsewhere of the phrase, quote, permanent ad valorem property tax rate. While this is a commonly repeated phrase, I believe it shows a misunderstanding of Measure 50. Measure 50 did not set a, quote, permanent tax rate. What it set was a permanent tax rate limit. The important distinction is that there is no permanent rate. Instead, there is a permanent limit on the rate. It is the limit that is permanent, not the rate. I would suggest adding the word limit after, quote, permanent ad valorem property tax rate, end quote, in A to correct this. While the inaccuracy in the amendment, as written, may withstand legal muster, is there any reason not to correct it if it requires the simple addition of a single word? My second issue is more a question for clarification. In B, it states that, quote, the city council may increase the tax rate limit, end quote, but gives no mechanism for doing so. Is it understood here that the method is when the council votes, is it understood here that the method is the council vote to levy the increased amount? I would think a clear statement at this meeting by the council that this is what is intended may well be useful in the future. And lastly, I wanted to address Councilor Essen's comment about the possibility of TVF&R's rate dropping to $1.52, which, as Councilor McKinney noted, is unlikely. But 4 years of 3% increases would have our restriction to about that same level. Thank you.
Say that again.
If you collect 4 years of 3% increases, that will take, without compounding, 30 cents off, which would be $1.58 would be the limitation. It's a little more than that because of compounding.
No further questions. Thank you. Appreciate it. Susan Osborne, please.
Is the button already on? Thank you. Hi, I'm Sue Osborne. First of all, I would like to say to the City Council that I really appreciate your stamina, because you just beat me all to pieces. And I also want to say that after attending several meetings earlier in the year, that I do believe that the annexation to TVF&R is a really good idea for many reasons. I sent you all an email today. I apologise for it because I very quickly read an article in the Graphic and I believe I completely misinformed myself about what was going on. So I'm here to correct myself. So I have mostly questions, but also, you know, I'm not a lawyer, I'm not an engineer, I'm not anything like that. I'm just Sue that lives down the street. And these are the things that are important to me. And you know, we've lived here in this city for, I don't know, 32 years, and I've loved it. But what I see happening around me is that if my husband and I tried to move here today, we would not, even on his salary, which is a pretty good one right now, I don't believe that we would be able to afford to buy a house. And there's many things in that, the property taxes, the utilities, all of those factor into it. So that's just kind of telling you about me, you know, and my life here. So I have one thing that I'm wondering about is a charter amendment necessary? Now, I know there's varying opinions on that. It does seem like it will force the City Council to stay accountable to the taxpayers. Do you need to be forced to? I don't know. I'm just putting that out there. The 3% is really galling me because to me what it's doing is it's giving the City Council a free pass to raise our taxes over the next 20 years. What would have, so that, as I understand it, and this is kind of a question, the tax rate is 438 right now, and that is what the restriction is. You can't just add percentages to that every year, am I right? That's a question, didn't it? 3%. Well, that's the state mandated one, right?
We are getting into your time, we are limited that we cannot assess greater than 438.
Okay.
Something.
Yes, that's what I understood.
Period.
And the state allows for a 3% increase every year, right, on property taxes? Is that right?
No, ma'am.
No, nothing. Okay.
It allows a 3% increase in the assessment of your property.
Right, that's what I mean, which then increases the taxes.
Right. Which increases your tax bill.
And as far as I know,
it does not increase the tax rate.
Right, but as far as I know, they've never not taken advantage of that, right? Because our tax bill goes up every year. So I'm just wondering why you're feeling that it's necessary to include that 3% in there when you don't have it right now. To me, it seems like a free pass, and I don't get a free pass on anything like that. I guess that's a rhetorical question. So does anybody know how much 3% will be in the first year? Have you guys calculated that out? How much the city will get from it? Can I ask the city manager or anybody? Okay, I'm just curious about how much money that would be.
It would be the first year, which is what?
Would be nothing.
2020, 21, right?
Yeah.
2019, 20. That first tax year, it would not be more than 7.5 cents per $1,000 of assessed value.
Right. I guess I was just wondering how much of a lump sum that would be for the city,
whatever your assessed value is.
For the whole city.
For you,
everybody. Everybody. Oh, I know it would be for me. I'm just wondering how much the city would bring in in 1 year, how much extra you would get on that. I'm just curious. Okay. Oh, yeah, I'd be interested in that. So I guess that's my take on it, is that I don't think that you're going to get the trust of the citizens when you try to pass this ballot measure by telling them that you're going to be increasing the fees 3% a year. I suspect that the ballot measure will fail, which will leave us nowhere. So that's just my take on it. So thanks for listening.
Any questions or comments from Ms. Osborne?
Oh.
None appearing. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. You have heard the comments. You know what is presented before you, and the logic that we have put into developing this, moving it from responding to the need of, or the request of the community to be able to have something locked into the charter rather than trusting their city council, which I've heard that you do not have trust in the city council not to take an alternative action. So we put it into in the form of a charter amendment that would limit our ability to raise taxes. We can, anytime we would exceed that 3%, we would still have to go to a vote of the public. If we saw a need, or there was a need for increasing your taxes beyond that, if we would need to do a special levy, a local option levy, or we need to do any other type of a bonding, we still need to come to you, the electorate, and get your blessing on that. And this doesn't change, other than it gives us a very small escalator that we can work with without putting a sudden undue burden on anybody's property. It doesn't mean that will go up, but it gives us the city through the budgeting process, which was, I think, a second question that the city attorney will address later. Through the budget process, we could increase that levy by as much as 3% without going to a vote. If we need to increase that levy by more, we would have to go to a vote of the public. So thank you for your comments. I appreciate it very much. Councilor Johnson?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, and I want to simply ask you if it's appropriate at this time to ask you a question.
Sure.
I'm sorry, I should have done this before the meeting, but I'm just curious where the 3% came from. And why 3% and why not?
Well, if the voters are saying we don't want property taxes increased with our previous ballot measures, however, it's okay to raise it. They gave us a 3% on the value of property, so that there can be some escalator in there for local government to have a resource to fund itself. I said to myself, that's reasonable, then how about a 3% here that we could have to pace the increased demands that inflation puts on the city to keep the other services moving.
Okay, thanks.
So we've already had the taxpayers give us that 3% through assessed property value. That's a reasonable amount. I'm being said to me, then I'm saying that's a reasonable amount that we could use for this, but no more than that. Anything else? City Attorney, the issue that Mr. Seppi raised about the using of the word limit.
It was the latter that you objected to, correct?
My evaluation of that is Mr. Seppi is technically correct, but it's a distinction without a difference. Meaning this, that as people discuss the effect of the constitutional amendments on the ad valorem tax rate, there has been set as he said, it's a permanent tax limit. So each year when a government body adopts a budget, that government body also levies the taxes. So every year when a budget is adopted, a decision is made on how much tax to be levied. The limitation from the constitutional amendment said that as of the effective date, that is the rate that each government body can levy and no more. And there's only a handful of cities in the state. I think the city manager told me it was 8. Is that right? It's about 8 that under levy, and the other 241 levy at the permanent tax rate. But Mr. Seppi's right. If you look at the Oregon Constitution, nowhere does it say permanent tax rate. It says it uses the term limit on the tax rate. So he's correct. But if you look at, the way it's discussed, including, I just did a quick Google search before I came over here, and the Oregon Blue Book, which we all look at, published by the Secretary of State's office, that describes the general components of the both state and local government in Oregon, makes the statement that each taxing district has a fixed permanent tax rate for operations. And so the way it's used in conversation and in all kinds of different areas is permanent tax rate. We did toy a little bit in some of the drafts of the charter amendment language. And one of the things that was decided was we use the term limit to mean the limit that's in subsection A of this proposed charter amendment. So that's the local tax limit. And if we start using tax limit in multiple areas, that potentially could be confusing to somebody. Whereas if we use the term permanent tax rate, that has, if not a precise definition, has a easily understood definition by the voters and anyone who's looking at this. So that's my response to Mr. Suppy's comments. That being said, if the council wanted to add limit in there, I don't think it would negatively, from a legal standpoint, it would negatively affect the charter language, but I think it could potentially lead to some confusion as people who don't understand the system very well read the proposed charter amendment.
Thank you, I appreciate that. And you indirectly answered number 2 of Mr. Suppy's comments.
About the levy?
Well, the mechanism.
Yeah, so it'd be, the mechanism would be as the council, first the budget committee, which the council is a part of, and then, Ms. Brown and Mr. Wall are members of our budget committee, propose a budget, and then the council finally adopts a budget in the process. And as in that budget process, then levies the taxes either as a full amount or as a taxable rate per $1,000 of assessed value. So it would be done in the tax rate levy portion of the budget.
Thank you. Councilor Johnson.
Are you ready for a motion, Mr. Mayor, or can we do that now, or?
I would entertain a motion.
Okay. I would move that we approve resolution number 2017-3406, a resolution to amend the charter. However, I do have an edit I'd like to make, and that is section B of the charter language. I would like that to start at the council may also levy in excess of the limit specified in subsection A as increase under this subsection if authorized by a measure approved by voters, and delete the previous sentence in section B. So in the actual charter amendment, section B, I would delete the sentence that refers to the 3% per year in my motion.
That's in your motion?
Yep.
I'm not hearing a second.
Okay.
Motion fails for lack of a second. You want to try number 2? All right. You know what one pleasure of the council isn't. Pleasure of the council. Councilor Bacon.
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that we approve resolution number 2017-3406.
It's been moved to adopt Resolution 2017-3406. I hear no second.
Second.
It's been seconded. A resolution approving the ballot title and explanatory statement and submitting proposed charter amendment to city voters, which would reduce the authority to levy an ad valorem property tax contingent upon the annexation of the city into the Tualatin Fire and Rescue District. Is there any further discussion? Councilor McKinney.
I will not support this motion, and I've written something I'd like to read to the council and to the folks tonight. This action does exactly what we said we would not do. It was said that it is not our intention to use or reinstate the Buck 88 for fire and rescue in regards to a successful annexation into TV FNR. If it doesn't appear in the budget, it will not be assessed or collected, is what we were telling the public. A mere increase of 3% over a possible 21 period of time says we will not keep our promise, nor can we be trusted. Honestly, budgetary increases in taxes assessed and collected is in the future for Newberg citizens. Anticipated expenditures are necessary to ensure the livability of Newberg and her citizens. That is the honest truth in this discussion. We may assess our limit of $1.38 or $4.38 by law. We may under-levy $1.88 if we wish. Limiting the tax levy limit to $2.50 per thousand is nonsense and a major disservice to the citizens of Newberg. Truman Stone cautioned us, suggesting a change in our governing documents is not a good choice. The suggested charter amendment is contrary to our promise. It doesn't appear and that promise was, if it doesn't appear in the budget, we won't collect. Citizens' criticism of council concerning the charter amendment is a black hole. It robs the citizens of this community the opportunity to grow and move forward.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Councilor Essen.
I'm going to support the amendment. Is it an amendment? Yeah, the charter amendment. That's correct. Basically, the big thing we did tonight was put it on the ballot. The whole issue of whether the city wanted to do it, the citizens wanted to do it or not. If they don't, they can vote no, and we'll go another direction. If they vote yes, I'm hearing that, you know, we don't trust you guys, so would you give us some assurances here? And we want the assurance that you're not just going to turn around and raise it up right back where you were. But in the amendment it says, if you want to raise it above 3%, bring it to us, and we'll vote. And if we vote for it, we know you need the money, but let us have a say. So I think that that's basically what we did. We're not keeping anything from the people. We're just letting them decide. And letting people decide is what they want. That's what the big cry was. Now, I have to admit, I'm very tempted to second your motion, which said, well, let's take the 3% completely out. But I don't know if I'm going to run or not for election, and I think I'm going to leave that 3% in because I'm worried I'm worried because I know we've got some things that Mr. McKinney is worried about, that there's going to be some needs. And so he wants to leave it open so that we can, if we need to, act quickly. And what will have to happen is it costs time and money to put this thing on the ballot. And it would make a lot of sense to give us the opportunity to just go ahead and make that, because we felt we needed it. But I like the idea, this is just me, of going back to the people and saying, this is what we need the money for. You tell us we can do it. And if you say no, public, then we're not going to do it. So it's up to us to make sure if we're doing something, we're going to raise it beyond the 3%, we better have a good reason for it. So that's why I'm going to vote for the amendment.
Any other comments? Councilor Johnson?
I'm not going to be supporting it, and it's pretty simple.
Say again?
I'm not going to support it, and
I'm still not hearing you. You're swallowing your words.
I am not going to support it.
Okay, thank you.
And it's very simple why. We're not providing the service. We're not providing the service anymore. We asked finance, how much does that service cost? They said $1.88 per thousand. We passed an ordinance saying that we were going to lower it. We heard from a public outcry saying, hey, a future council could turn that back on whenever they wanted. I tend to try to listen. There is nothing saying that if we turn our tax, the amount we levy down to $2.50, and something big comes up, that we can't go to the voters and say, we need another $1 per thousand, we need another 25 cents per thousand. We're already getting the 3% increase per year on the assessed value. I see the 3% increase in this charter amendment as double dipping, almost as bad as having a tax rate that isn't providing a service. And that's what this does over the course of 21 years. So that's why I'm not supporting it.
Councilor Bacon?
I am supporting it, and this is why. We gave up fire service because we couldn't afford it anymore. The 3% is much less than what our costs go up every year. Much less. There's a lot. We could have kept that $1.88 and spent every cent of it well. We could have paid for communications. We could have paid for roads. We could have paid for all those things. But that's not what the citizens wanted, and this is where we are. And I'm fine with that. Now, when we look at the future and PERS, and we look at what's the next service that the citizens want to give up? Is it police? Is it dispatch? Do we want more roads to fall apart? I mean, that 3% isn't going to save us, but it will help push us that maybe we will be able to continue the level of services that we want. Because, what do I hear when I go out? I hear we want to keep our 911. Do you want to pay for it? We want better roads. Do you want to pay for it? The answer to pay for it is always no. So, it's where is this money supposed to magically come from? I think we do our best, and our staff does its best, making sure that money is well spent. Is it always perfect? No. Is any big machine ever perfect? No. So I am supporting the 3% because I do believe that while we would have had to give it up anyway, or we would have had to go for a levy, or we would have had to charge rural more, we would have had to do a lot of things to keep the fire service that we had. This is a mechanism so that the future we can afford what we have before finding ourselves in a position where we have to contract out or start a new district or go to WACA or private water. I'm just making stuff up now. But the point is we can't pay the bills with what we have. We have serious failures, and this 3% isn't going to go the long road to fix it, but eventually, hopefully, we can fix things without having to give up that service here in the city.
You've heard two different viewpoints. I will be supporting the resolution, but I do it somewhat reluctantly. I was hoping that we could do this type of management of our budgetary process through an ordinance to guide the council on how to levy funds. But that didn't seem to be sitting well with a number of people. So the alternative was, well, then we can maybe put it into the charter. I still think it's the right thing to do. I'm reluctant to do it in the charter, but that seems to be the avenue that was receiving the greater support. So I will be supporting it. Councilor Bacon has articulated it well. Many of the things the concerns that were raised are still there. One way or the other, they're still there. We haven't resolved it by not moving in this particular direction. So with that, is there any further discussion? Councilor McKinney.
I'm hoping to persuade one of you three not to do this. A charter amendment, this charter amendment in no way reflects the wants or the wishes of the people who brought the charter amendment mentality to town here. It doesn't achieve their goals, it doesn't achieve ours. Is what this will do will make us a second-rate citizen community. If this is not a good idea and 3% will never be sufficient, why in the world would we ever want to limit ourselves to a $2.50 rate when we know that to just keep this community going, it has to be closer to $4.38 to be able to do that. Your proposed initial amendment perhaps is that we bring to the voters whatever is necessary to keep us moving forward and everything else. But to you three, this is a black hole. And you limit this council and future councils to an unlivable 250, and maybe three, and 21 years later, maybe we get there or not. Our problems in this town can't wait 21 years. Thank you for your support, Patrick here, and Scott, join us. This is a terrible idea. Even 3 months from now, 4 months from now, next year, as Sue and I discussed on the phone, you could do a better charter amendment deal than what we're faced here. This is not the answer. You don't change your governing document to get past whatever this is here, all right? Please vote no on this proposed charter amendment. There's another one out there somewhere. We just know that this is not it. I don't want to be part of a council that doesn't keep our promise. I don't want to be part of a council that lies to the people. We said if it doesn't appear in the city budget, we will not assess and or collect. That was the mantra. That's what we were using. When you and I had coffee numerous times at Charter, that's been the position. All right? This is bad stuff. Please don't vote in favor of this.
Councilor Bacon.
I guess I have some confusion over Councilor McKinney's argument, because it seems to go both to not doing the charter amendment so the council can use the money if we need to, but it also goes to the charter amendment saying, or that we said that we wouldn't use the money if it wasn't in the budget. But here's my thinking. If there is a catastrophe and we need money, we do have a mechanism to go to the people and say, look, here's what happened, and this is what we need. And we know that in this community, when we have a good argument, the voters vote yes. So I fully trust that if we need to go to the voters for money and we have a good argument, they will be there for us, and they will, because it is their community, and they do love it as much as everyone in this who bothered to show up today. So I guess if we do nothing, the council has the full access to the money, and it's our whim at which, and our level of importance, that we will use to get the money. If we do the charter amendment, we are compromising with what the originators of the plan, in a sense, came up with, but still understanding through our budget cycle that there will always be this need for, how bills go up, like they do in your house. I pay one bill, and in the next month it goes up 3%. We have the same problems. So I see this as a compromise that puts the decision of where the tax, and it's not this council. It's not just this council we're talking about. You could have 100% trust in the six of us. But 10 years from now, something could happen, and we've seen it happen. Look at Damascus. I mean, look at all these places where people of different, people win and get these seats, and it becomes about them and not about the community. And I believe that the voters of Newberg care about this community, and if we went to them, they would give us money. They would say yes, and as long as we build trust with them, and with the street program, we have, created this list, and we said we're going to do this, and we do it, and we show that trust, and we continue to move forward that way. We will always have the support. And I think this charter amendment goes in the direction of saying that we trust you because we're listening to you. It doesn't say you don't trust us. It says you want the ability to have a say in the future and how we spend that money.
Councilor Essen, Councilor Johnson.
I'm confused. I am, because it sounds like that when I hear Stephen talk, that I'm dooming the city to not having enough money. Well, I'm only dooming them if I don't trust the voters. The city has all the money in the world. All they got to do is go to the voters and say, this is what, we need more money, and this is the reason. Do you concur? That's the question. Do we trust the voters? Do we think that the voters are going to say, oh, we like not having any roads, we like not having any police. We don't want to pay for the radio system that's going to save our lives when the big one hits. If they do, well, guess what? We listen to the voters. This is what you call a democracy, a real democracy. You're counting on the voice of the people to tell you what to do. So I have no trouble at all. We're building in a little 3% because the mayor suggested it, and it makes sense to me. But, I trust the voters, and if I don't, well, they're going to get rid of me anyway. So I don't see this as a big problem. And okay, let's say I think what you're saying, Pat's saying is, it's okay, and I don't really quite understand what you're saying, but I think it would be okay if we took the 3% off. If we just said, okay, make the $1.88 be it, but don't put the 3%. Well, I could support that, but I thought we sort of had a consensus here that, because that's why we sent them, we only had so much time to get this thing done, as I recall. And this is the night, so we got to make a decision tonight. If we make any other decision, then we're going to give it back to you, and you're going to have to come and it's done. We're not going to have it at all. I guess maybe that's what we're trying to accomplish. But I didn't tell staff to go bring this back to me, not thinking I was going to go for it.
So I'm sticking with my guns.
Councilor Johnson.
My issue with the charter amendment that we were presented is that I would love, I think Sue had a perfect testimony. We talk about affordable housing, and yet we're, with this charter amendment, potentially, we could increase, and the math is funky, so Robert, don't slap me over the head. But, you know, in my household, my wife has a pretty good job at Intel, and the only time she ever got over a 6% raise a year was when she got a promotion. And I'm wondering how many other people in our community get a 6% raise per year automatically. And that troubles me. And that's why I think if you don't provide a service, you shouldn't levy the tax. Brian? Take the 3% out. I'll vote for it all day.
Councilor Bacon.
I just want to point out it's really not a 6% raise.
Hey, my light's been on a while.
Councilor McKinney.
I want to make it perfectly clear. I am not proposing either or. I'm saying that a charter amendment, it's not a good idea to change the charter. It's not a good idea to change your constitution to achieve some ministerial action or change a policy. You don't change your constitution. Administratively, you change your policy along the way here. So, and that still makes a lot of sense to me. If we want to forgive a levy, we can do that all day long. You know, we don't have to assess to the limit of 438. If it doesn't appear in the budget, don't assess it, don't collect it. Sue spoke some real wisdom to us here in saying she's got some real questions here as a citizen or whatever. And the charter amendment has been something we've been trying to fly by the seat of our pants. And, you know, we were trying to jockey the language here or jockey the language there. Just because we're up against a deadline, we don't have to make a decision in the affirmative to be able to do this. We could wait and even make a better plan here. Now, I'm going to conclude with this remark, is that, Denise, I love you, but there's no crystal ball. There's no guarantee that the electorate, that people would vote for something just because you said it was, not you personally, or just because you said it was a good idea. There are communities all across America. They put something out for a vote, for a levy, for whatever it is, and it's denied. If you can guarantee me that these sensible Newberg voters would always respond, whatever here, guys, you guys, I thought that was the reason you were elected, was to represent the community and to make sane, sensible decisions. And when something like this comes down the pike, you don't fall in the black hole. You make a much better decision than what's here. I'm still begging, at least the three of you guys, one of you say no, so that we get the opportunity to do something better. This is not the best path to take. You don't change your governing documents to take care of an administrative problem. I'd ask for an amen, but I'm not a preacher anymore. I got some amens, thank you. Amen. Thank you, buddy.
The question has been called for. Is there any further discussion? None appearing. Division of the House, please.
Councilor McKinney.
Absolutely not.
Councilor Bacon.
Yes.
Councilor Johnson.
No.
Councilor Essen.
Yes.
Mayor Andrews.
Yes.
3-2.
3, 2, 1. Motion carries.
Move to recess.
You want to break for a moment?
Yeah.
All right. We will be in recess until approximately 20 minutes until 10.
You should have changed.